Chapter 3907. She simply shifted her gaze away and looked at Su Qingbing, who had yet to leave. Su Qingbing still maintained a lazy posture. That dignified look on her elegant face had been retracted by quite a bit. She just raised her head and looked at that figure on the wall. Between her beautiful eyes, there was some brilliance flowing. But when Yi Qing Luo took a careful look, it was a stretch of deep without a single bit of emotion. She followed Su Qingbing's gaze. On the wall, the red-robed man who was standing against the wind met her eyes expressionlessly. The person Su Qingbing was looking at was Zhu Wuexen. She raised her brows, feeling that she seemed to have discovered something incredible. Since he's safe, I'll make a move first. I'll leave these two fools in your care. Su Qingbing seemed to have sensed Yi Qing Luo's gaze and immediately retracted her gaze, as she pretended not to mind and waved her hand. Yi Qing Luo's eyes curved into a crescent shape as her figure moved and appeared next to Su Qingbing. She raised her hand and hooked onto Su Qingbing's shoulder. The young lady gave a teasing smile as she teased, "Why, are you in a hurry to leave, afraid that I'll see through some secret that I shouldn't see?" Su Qingbing's beautiful eyes flashed as she subconsciously looked at Zhu Wuexen. After this action was done, Su Qingbing then realized that she had been hooked. Yi Qing Luo's smile deepened. Her curved brows and narrow long eyes outlined an arc, like a blooming datura flower, so alluring that it made one suffocated. Tisk! Su Qingbing's look made Yi Qing Luo even more interested. She was really curious. What had happened between Su Qingbing and Zhu Wuexan? She could tell. Su Qingbing's impression of Zhu Wuexan was very deep. I have to return to Blood Color headquarters first. Su Qingbing's hair stood on end from Yi Qing Luo's meaningful smile. She hurriedly found an excuse. She turned around and hurriedly leapt up the wall. On top of the wall, Su Qingbing intentionally halted her footsteps. Her vision clashed with Zhu Wuexan. In just a few breaths' time, she raised her breath again, and her figure flashed as she blended into the night. The courtyard, which had turned into ruins, fell into a strange silence. That pair of foolish lovers were still hugging each other, unwilling to part. A fool is a fool, hugging each other and feeling each other's warmth. This was their happiness. But Yi Qing Luo shot a glance at the both of them as her lips suddenly curled into a crafty arc. Then he lifted his leg and kicked Pei Sheng's, but Pei Sheng's entire body was kicked forward by the force. Gu Zishi almost lost her footing. Following that, several medicine bottles were stuffed into their arms. Get out of the house and make love. Yi Qing Luo turned their bodies around and pushed them towards the room which wasn't affected by the battle earlier. Pei Sheng was forcefully pushed to the door as he struggled to turn his head around to take a look at Yi Qing Luo. But because of Yi Qing Luo's strength, he was unable to resist at all. Luo, don't tell me you don't like our relationship because His Majesty is not here and you can't stand it? Yi Qing Luo's expression instantly sunk. The hand that grabbed Pei Sheng's shoulder suddenly tightened. Pei Sheng screamed miserably as his shoulder struggled to pull away from Yi Qing Luo's palm. It was so painful that he almost cried. Yi Qing Luo gave a fake smile. If you still want to hug a beauty to sleep tonight, you'd better shut your mouth and roll into the room. Pei Sheng, this smile is so scary. He swiftly hugged Gu Zishi tightly as he escaped into the room. Chapter 3908. In the courtyard, there was only Yi Qing Luo left. She then stretched her body lazily. As she yawned, she looked towards the red figure standing on the wall. The show has ended. Aren't you leaving? Zhu Wuexan's vision, from the start, was fixed on her. When he saw the young lady's languid look, her long and narrow eyes were filled with a lazy, misty look towards him. His eyes glowed with a bright light. Even his pitch-black pupils involuntarily contracted. His hands, which were hanging by his side, clenched into fists, especially when that young lady yawned with a soft and coquettish voice rang. His body almost instantly turned stiff and taut. For a long time the man didn't reply. Yi Qing Luo lowered her hands as she raised her brows at him, meeting with Zhu Wu Xian's scorching gaze. Her eyelashes fluttered slightly as she tilted her head, her eyes revealing a smile which didn't look like a smile. "Have you seen enough?" This sentence made Zhu Wu Xian have a response. His thin lips moved slightly as his voice was very cold. "Not enough. If you're still conscious, then please go ahead. Take care, I won't send you off." Yi Qing Luo intentionally ignored his provocative words as she impatiently waved her hand. Zhu Wu Xian instead flew down from the wall. He got close to Yi Qing Luo. The red-robed man and red-robed young lady's figures intertwined. Yi Qing Luo didn't evade. Instead, she faced the man's approaching face, raising her head as her lips curled into a bright smile. This smile, like a blooming poppy flower, giving off a suffocating charm, magnified under his eyes. Zhu Wu Xian's heart skipped a beat. Immediately after, his body abruptly pulled away from Yi Qing Luo. His eyes were flickering with erratic emotions. Yi Qing Luo revealed an understanding smile. She was very clear. The more she expressed that she didn't want to interact with him, Zhu Wu Xian would be insatiable, wanting to leave a place in her heart. On the contrary, she cooperated with Zhu Wu Xian's words. Zhu Wu Xian would be even more shy than her. Looking at Yi Qing Luo's teasing smile, Zhu Wu Xian's pupils contracted. He suddenly stretched out his hand and clasped Yi Qing Luo's wrist as his eyes stared straight at her. "Do you think that I don't dare to do anything to you?" "Yes," Yi Qing Luo replied straightforwardly. "If you dare, when I just arrived at the Earth Realm, you painstakingly imprisoned me for half a month and erased all my memories. You would have done it." The hand that was clasping her wrist suddenly tightened. Even Zhu Wuxin stiffened for a moment. "Even now, you still blame me." Zhu Wuxin stared at her. It was not a question, but a statement. "It would be a lie to say that I don't blame him." Yi Qing Luo didn't try to hide it. No matter which woman it is, if she was kidnapped by another man and imprisoned by his side for as long as half a month, would she not blame that man? Zhu Wuxin's eyes darkened, and he clenched his fists. His slender fingers pressed onto Yi Qing Luo's wrist, causing some pain. Zhu Wu Xian didn't bother about Yi Qing Luo's slightly creased brows because of the pain, but instead pressed down even tighter. Even the words that came out of his mouth were mixed with the meaning of gnashing his teeth. "I shouldn't have been soft on you in the first place." Not soft? His meaning was that he should have taken the opportunity to eat her up in the first place. Yi Qing Luo laughed lightly, but there wasn't any hint of a smile in her eyes. "If you really did that, then between us, there would no longer be any feelings. The next time we meet, we will be enemies. Enemies too. At least, you will not belong to that man." Zhu Wuxin's eyes seemed to be surging with waves. Chapter 3909. Yi Qing Luo frowned. Looking at the madness in Zhu Wuxin's eyes, her heart skipped a beat. He subconsciously wanted to break free from Zhu Wuxin's grip. However, Zhu Wuxin tightened his grip. He reached out with his long arms. He then pressed Yi Qing Luo heavily into his arms. The plum fragrance which assaulted her nostrils made Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased tightly in discomfort. She struggled. "Zhu Wuxin." "Woman, you are really heartless." Zhu Wuxin was almost gnashing his teeth next to her ear. "This time, I really do not want to go easy on you." As soon as he finished speaking, he exerted strength in his arm. The man's warm breath rushed over from a close distance. There was also a hint of fragrance mixed with it that made her feel alarmed. Almost at the instant the man lowered his head, Yi Qing Luo's eyes flashed coldly. His dark force burst forth. He flipped his palm, intending to attack Zhu Wuxin and avoid his approach. It was at this moment. A heavy groan sounded beside his ear. The hand on his waist suddenly loosened. What replaced it was another strong and powerful force. The familiar fragrance of sandalwood wafted into his nose. Yi Qing Luo turned her head happily. Sure enough, she saw her man appear behind her. Dmo Xian had one arm around her waist. His expression was noble and elegant as his gaze was filled with a chilly glint as he stared intently at Zhu Wu Exing. I'm late. The man's deep and mellow voice instantly soothed Yi Qing Luo's restless heart. His large and thick palms pulled the young girl's delicate body into his embrace. It was different, thick and sturdy, a different kind of warmth. It was a different taste. It was a completely different feeling from Zhu Wuxin. Dmo Xian was the feeling she wanted to have the most. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes trembled slightly. Suddenly, she raised her lips and tightly wrapped her arms around the man's firm waist. She buried her face in his chest. Struck by the palm, Zhu Wuxin had to retreat several steps before he could stabilize himself. The flame-like red swayed. After Yi Qing Luo absorbed the warmth, she popped her head out to take a look at Zhu Wu Exan. He felt that the current Zhu Wuxin had a gloomy feeling, as if the flames all over his body were about to be extinguished, as if I had lost all my lifelight. He seemed to have sensed her gaze. Zhu Wuxin clutched his chest and looked at her with a pale face. His eyes met hers. A smile appeared on his grave and stern face. His lips curled up slightly. There was a hint of bitterness in his voice. Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but creased her slender brows once again. He didn't have time to think about it. A large palm suddenly covered her eyes. In front of him, there was only warmth, and he couldn't see anything. Don't look at him. The man's domineering voice rang in her ears, and there was a hint of jealousy in his tone. Then, he raised his head and looked at Zhu Wu Exan. His entire body exuded a chill. Zhu Wu Exan, I haven't settled the score with you for what happened last time. You dare to play the same trick again? The moment he opened his mouth, he was not angry, but he exuded an imposing aura. Zhu Wuxin sneered. What? I merely touched her, yet you're already so furious. Could it be that you think she's dirty? As soon as he said that, the surrounding temperature had also dropped to the extreme. Dmo Xian's eyes gleamed coldly. The murderous aura was also sweeping wildly. But Zhu Wu Exan laughed crazily. That grave and stern face looked extremely insane. Both their profound rays intertwined, just as it was about to explode. Suddenly, a slender fair hand gently placed on the back of the hand which covered her eyes. Slowly it pulled that hand down. The young lady's eyes regained its clarity. Chapter 39:10. The young lady's alluring face was filled with calmness. The corners of his lips curled into a mocking sneer. Even the gaze which she shot towards Zhu Wu Exan was filled with viciousness. This gaze made Zhu Wu Exan's heart felt as though it was pierced by something as it trembled fiercely, as though something was gradually disappearing between him and Yi Qing Luo. The red-robed man's eyes were filled with madness. At this moment, there was finally a slight fluctuation. The wind brought along the young lady's ridiculing laughter. Zhu Wu Exan, do you think that after knowing that you imprisoned me for nearly half a month, I will still be defenseless against you? Zhu Wu Exan, do you think that after doing this, I will belong to you again? Zhu Wu Exan, the dirty person is you. The young lady spoke each word extremely clearly. Her voice was very sweet, but in Zhu Wu Exan's ears, it was like a sharp blade, fiercely slicing his eardrums. That sharp blade went down from his ears to his heart, and then slowly sliced his heart bit by bit. Unbearable pain. Zhu Wu Exan shut his eyes tightly. From the moment you made a move against me earlier, I was completely certain earlier you stopped me several times, not allowing me to rush over to save Pei Sheng, obviously. On purpose. At that moment, Yi Qingluo was already suspicious towards Zhu Wuxian's appearance, but because it was Zhu Wuxian, she didn't investigate further, because she knew that Zhu Wuxian's obsession towards her would absolutely not harm her. So she chose to believe in Zhu Wuxian, until just now, when she smelled that fragrance from the man. Yi Qingluo then realized that everything was because she was too naive. From the start of Zhu Wuxian's appearance till now, all had a motive. Yi Qingluo. Zhu Wuxian heard Yi Qingluo's ridiculing words, and when she looked at him, that disappointment and ridicule, his heart felt as though it was being sliced into pieces. He subconsciously wanted to explain, Yi Qingluo is not. Are you trying to say that it's not what I think? Yi Qingluo interrupted his words, as her smile became even more contemptuous. Even between his brows, there was a mocking smile that was not a smile. Zhu Wuxian. Suddenly, she called his name in a serious tone. The young lady withdrew herself from Dmo Xian's embrace as she lifted her light footsteps and walked towards him. The girl's expression was cold, and her picturesque eyebrows were filled with killing intent. Zhu Wuxian felt an inexplicable sense of nervousness. He was so nervous that he could only stare at the girl's approaching face and clench his fists tightly, waiting for her to continue. You want to explain, right? All right, I'll give you a chance. She stood 3 steps away from Zhu Wuxian. Then, she raised her eyes and stared straight into his eyes. Zhu Wuxian's heart skipped a beat again. Do you dare look me in the eye and tell me that your appearance today is not a coincidence, but an accident? Zhu Wuxian's eyes darkened. Even his cold face was covered with a layer of frost. This reaction, even if he didn't answer, Yi Qingluo had already gotten her answer. She sneered and looked at Zhu Wuxian. She couldn't help but laugh. Zhu Wuxian, if you really want to lie to me, you should lie to the end. I want to lie to you. Zhu Wuxian's expression was gloomy and cold as his eyes stared deadly at Yi Qingluo as a whirlpool appeared in between his brows. But I know that the minute I really lie to you, you will really become a stranger to me. Amen, it's not fake. Yi Qingluo smiled. Her smile was gorgeous, absolutely beautiful. Chapter 39:11. It wasn't fake, which meant, no matter what his answer was, like strangers, these 4 words couldn't be fake. Zhu Wuxian's heartstrings quivered. He thought, after Yi Qingluo found out that he had imprisoned her for half a month, she wasn't too angry and still treated him the same as before. He thought Yi Qingluo wouldn't blame him, but he had never expected Yi Qingluo to be so resolute that when he intended to do it for the second time, she would not hesitate to cut off all relations with him. His heart, as compared to the first time he met her, was even more painful from her cold attitude and when she totally didn't recognize him. It was so painful that he was about to die. He thought he was already numb, and no matter how painful it was, he could maintain his calmness, to stand calmly in front of Yi Qingluo and continue his stubbornness. But the feeling now proved that his thought was really just a thought. His heart would hurt. When he met with the young lady's icy cold gaze, his heart would surge with waves, not to mention standing in front of her. Now, he only had the urge to escape from her accusing gaze. Zhu Wuxian, you're still working with the secluded palace, right? You want to help the secluded palace to deal with the people around me, right? Even when Yi Qingluo saw his cold face, that complicated and painful expression, she didn't let him off. She was still overbearing. The imposing manner became more and more pressing. The expression on Zhu Wuxian's face became even more conflicted. He moved his thin lips, and his voice sounded a little hoarse. No, it's not like that, He wanted to explain, but when the words were about to come out of his mouth, he licked his dry lips and stopped the words from leaving his mouth. Immediately after, his thin lips pursed, not saying a word. Yi Qing Luo waited for a moment, and on seeing him maintaining his silence, her lips curled into a sneer of ridicule. Explain. I'm not being unreasonable. If you don't want to listen to your explanation, I'll give you a chance to explain. Zhu Wu Xian continued to stare at her without blinking, not saying a word. Yi Qing Luo's gaze towards him became even colder. Since you're not going to explain, then I'll speak according to my understanding. Her brows rose as her tone was filled with ridicule. Do you think that after breaking my wings, I can only choose to rely on you? Ha! Zhu Wu Xian, do you think I'm such a person? No. Light flickered in Zhu Wu Xian's eyes, and he wanted to answer. However, he still held back and did not say it out loud. If Yi Qing Luo was that kind of person, he would absolutely not take another look at her. But it was precisely because he knew this. He wanted to see even more. After Yi Qing Luo lost everything, what would they become? At that time, would his obsession still be as deep as it was now? Zhu Wuxin, just give up. Even if you want to break my wings, even if you want to separate me and Xian, this lifetime, the next lifetime, the next lifetime, no matter how long it takes, Yi Qing Luo, will never choose you. Yi Qing Luo's voice was cold and ruthless. The sonorous voice was like a huge hammer that landed heavily on Zhu Wuxin's heart. Zhu Wu Xian's body shook violently. He flicked his sleeves. A cool breeze swept past. Several sharp sounds of wind could be heard in the air. The red figure had already disappeared before his eyes. In her resolute words, Zhu Wuxin fled in panic. Yi Qing Luo was expressionless, as though she had no emotions towards his escape. Only after she was sure that Zhu Wu Xian's presence had completely disappeared. Chapter 39:12. The young lady's face was pale, and there was no longer that overbearing aura from earlier on. Her petite body was caught by someone. Tightly, she was brought into a warm and spacious embrace. Lil Luo. Dmo Xian's voice was filled with anxiety and worry. Yi Qing Luo wanted to open her eyes and smile at him to reassure him. But the minute she opened her eyes, it was a patch of blood color before her eyes, which immediately turned into a patch of pitch black. She was unable to open her eyes. The dizziness in her head made her lose the ability to think. Finally, under Dmo Xian's gentle and affectionate call of Lil Luo, she completely lost all consciousness. Lil Luo. Sensing the change in Yi Qing Luo's breathing, Dmo Xian's voice suddenly rose as his shimmering eyes stared intently at the person in his arms. After checking the young lady's pulse, Dmo Xian's expression turned darker. His fingers clenched tightly as he gritted his teeth and spat out 3 words. Zhu Wu Xian. Damn that Zhu Wu Xian. No matter if Lil Luo would forgive Zhu Wu Xian, he would absolutely not forgive her. Dmo Xian tightened his arms as he raised his voice and called out in a low voice, Xian Beiyuan. 2 figures, one tall and one short, appeared in the night sky. Guard this place. Don't let other blind things come near. Dmo Xian instructed and carried Yi Qing Luo as he flew away. Tang Beiyuan stared blankly at the direction where Dmo Xian left, watching his figure disappear completely. She then regained her senses as she slowly stood up. The man on the side was tall and imposing, with a handsome face, but his brows were rigid and solemn. The man's vision had been on Tang Beiyuan. Seeing that she stood up and was still in a daze, he comforted her. Madam will be fine. Hearing the man's voice, Tang Beiyuan's eyelashes fluttered. When she raised her head, her lips curled into a smile. Amen, I know. With the Overlord around, Madam will definitely be fine. She had seen with her own eyes how much her master cared about Yi Qing Luo. Her daze wasn't because she was worried about Yi Qing Luo, but very envious. Envious of the relationship between the Overlord and Madam. No matter what time it would always make one laugh unknowingly. As for her, even though her fiancé was by her side, He could even touch it with his hand. However, she still felt as if they were thousands of miles apart and out of reach. Tang Beiyuan lowered her eyes, and the smile on her face disappeared. Yuaner. The man sensed that Tang Beiyuan was upset. He raised his hand and placed it on her shoulder in confusion. What's wrong? Tang Beiyuan raised her head and stared blankly at Lang Lixian, who was a head taller than her. Soon, a smile appeared on his face. I'm fine. Lang Lixian caressed her face and didn't ask any more questions. The man wiped his face with his slightly cold hand. Tang Beiyuan instinctively reached out and grabbed his hand. Lang Lixian was startled and looked at her doubtfully. Tang Beiyuan gritted her teeth, mustered up her courage, and placed the man's hand on her waist. Then she turned around and hooked her arms around his neck. It's been a long time since we've been this close. To be more precise, it had been a long time since they last saw each other. Every time they met, it was just a hurried glance. After that, they would leave in a hurry, not to mention a hug to feel each other's warmth. There wasn't even a chance to greet each other. Chapter 39:13. Lang Lixian had just finished his words when he used his actions to express his attitude. He pulled Tang Beiyuan's hand away and widened the distance between the both of them. Immediately after, he leapt up the wall in the dark, and his entire figure was hidden in the darkness. Tang Beiyuan stood in a daze on the spot. The hands which were pulled away by the man were still hanging stiffly in the air. After some time, he slowly retracted his hands. There seemed to be a man's touch on her wrists. There seemed to be a man's scent in her nose. Tang Beiyuan's lips suddenly twitched as she gave a soft laugh. She turned her head and walked towards the other side of the wall, hiding in the dark with the man on the left and right, and completely hiding the sparkling eyes which flashed past her eyes. Ah! Qiao residence. Mo Xian carried Yi Qing Luo back to the room. His fiery appearance was accompanied by a powerful pressure. It made those who had just returned to the Qiao residence ran out of the room in shock. It was so late at night, this was very scary, all right? They thought that the secluded palace had made a comeback. But after seeing the unconscious Yi Qing Luo, everyone couldn't stand still as they flocked over. Kitty Li was carried out from Zomo's arms, and she was still rubbing her eyes sleepily, but when she saw Yi Qing Luo being placed on the bed, her eyes suddenly opened wide. She scurried out of Zomo's arms and pounced towards the bed. Sister. What happened to Sister? What happened to her? Kitty Li held Yi Qing Luo's hand, but realized that her hand was ice cold. Old Lai didn't feel well. Earlier at the Treasures Exchange Hall, wasn't she still fine? How long has it been? In his impression, Yi Qing Luo and the Overlord were on the same level of abnormality. No one could hurt her. So on the way back to the Qiao residence, they didn't specially wait for Yi Qing Luo. No one had expected. It was such a coincidence. Yi Qing Luo was coincidentally injured. Gue Wu stood in the crowd as he frowned slightly. Apparently, he was puzzled over why Yi Qing Luo was injured and was carried back by Mo Xian. She's fine. Among the many concerned voices, Mo Xian's slightly hoarse voice rang. He also successfully suppressed the voices of those who were talking at once. Mo Xian sat on the bedside. Kitty Li looked at Mo Xian and then at Yi Qing Luo. Under Zomo's tugging, he reluctantly let go of Yi Qing Luo's hand and gave up his position to Mo Xian. Mo Xian held Yi Qing Luo's hand, using his broad palm to warm Yi Qing Luo's hand as he continued to speak calmly. I'm here, everyone, don't worry. Everyone turned pale and wanted to ask more questions, but looking at Mo Xian's expression, however, none of them dared to ask. In the end, Gue Wu took the lead and walked out of the room. Only then did the others leave the room one after another, looking back every few steps. After closing the door, Kitty Li pursed her lips. She grabbed Zomo's hand with displeasure and worry, pinching it from time to time. What's wrong with my sister? Di-Zun and brother-in-law didn't say anything. How can I be at ease? The Overlord is more worried about her than any of us. Mo caressed Kitty Lee's head. Since the Overlord says it's fine, then Xiao Qing Luo will be fine. Qing Luo Shi. Suddenly, a soft but emotionless voice was heard from the crowd. Everyone's gazes turned towards the direction of the voice. Chapter 39:14. Drugged unconscious? What kind of joke was that? Yi Qing Luo, that kind of pervert. She was a top-tier alchemist. How could she be drugged unconscious? It's the truth. Mo Ying blinked her empty eyes and repeated seriously, "You can ask her when she wakes up." Looking at the little loli's serious look, everyone was still in disbelief. After all, drugging had always been Yi Qing Luo's specialty. "I believe you." Suddenly a deep voice was heard. Qiao Yinyan had appeared at the corner of the long corridor and was slowly walking towards their direction. The moment Qiao Yinyan appeared, everyone stopped their discussion. The man walked slowly to Mo Ying. His gaze was deep like the sea, and his silver hair hung down his cheeks, adding a mysterious and noble feeling to the man. Mo Ying raised her head and blinked as she looked at the approaching figure. The aura from the man made her heart, or rather her soul, had a restless feeling. It was very uncomfortable, and she didn't like this feeling. She wanted to avoid it, but Qiao Yinyan seemed to see through her thoughts as he stretched out his hand and blocked in front of her. The man's gaze was burning, as if he could see through Mo Ying's soul. You have always been sensitive to the people you care about and can easily see the condition of others. This point, you still haven't changed. Mo Ying's brows were tightly knitted together as she looked at him with her empty eyes. However, his pupils were not focused at all, and there was not the slightest bit of spirit in them. When these eyes looked over, for a moment it made one feel that this pair of eyes were already blind. Anyone who was stared at by such empty eyes for a long time would have a creepy feeling. However, Qiao Yinyan met her gaze and gently curved his thin lips. He smiled and said, "Even your expression of disgust hasn't changed." Mo Ying's stiff expression loosened for a moment. When the others heard this sweet, cloying words, all of them rubbed their arms. How did Qiao Yinyan see the bored expression on Mo Ying's face? That was obviously expressionless, okay? That was what everyone thought in their hearts. But as the person involved, Mo Ying was shocked. She had always been unable to express her emotions. Her face was stiff. His eyes were lifeless. Even his voice was completely emotionless. In addition, she couldn't even express ordinary emotions. Even a sensitive lady like Yi Qing Luo would not be able to detect her emotions. This man in front of him, yet he could see through her heart so easily. Could it be that she really knew him before? After Lin Mingya invited him out of the room, the chatter outside the door continued. Mo Xian looked at the unconscious young girl. His fingertips covered the young girl's slightly furrowed brows and gently smoothed her brows. Then, with a flick of his sleeve, an invisible wave spread out in the room, forming an oval transparent barrier that enveloped the entire room. It also successfully blocked out the noisy discussion outside the door. He held the girl's cold hand tightly, one hand on his cheek and the other on his mouth to warm it. His peerless face was filled with a peaceful expression of pampering. There was not the slightest hint of anxiety or unease. He wasn't worried that this medicine would cause any harm or influence to Yi Qing Luo, because this was the medicine which Zhu Wu Xian had given to Yi Qing Luo. Even if Zhu Wu Xian was working together with the secluded palace, he would absolutely not hurt Yi Qing Luo. Chapter 39:15. But he was unable to ascertain when Yi Qing Luo would wake up. Mo Xian's eyes were fixated on the young lady's peaceful sleeping face without blinking. Her eyes were calm, pure and beautiful, but that pair of icy cold hands couldn't be warmed up no matter what. His broad palm closed over one of her small hands. The other hand stretched out his slender fingers, gently caressing the young lady's icy cold but peaceful facial features. After gazing at it for some time, he sighed softly. Straightening himself, he took off his coat. Lifting up a corner of the blanket, he burrowed into it. Even though she was covered in the blanket, the young lady's body was still icy cold. Diamo Chien laid on one side, his arms scooped the young lady into his arms. Using his own warmth, he enveloped the young lady completely. If it wasn't for the fact that the young lady's breathing was smooth and her pulse was steady, this icy cold touch, it was indeed very scary. The person in his arms seemed to have felt the source of warmth. Her little body shrunk into the man's arms. Her peaceful little face revealed a blissful and satisfied smile. Diamo Chien placed his chin on her head, feeling the person in his arms, infected with his warmth, his scent. The last time in the Nirvana realm's passageway to the upper realm, he was careless and allowed Zhu Wu Xan to snatch Lil Luo away. That was close to half a month's time. Lil Luo was imprisoned in such a state by Zhu Wu Xan. This time, how long would Lil Luo sleep for? Yi Qing Luo's head was groggy, as though she was being pressed down heavily by something. She was so exhausted that she couldn't even move a muscle. She creased her brows in pain. She wanted to raise her hand to rub her temples, but her arms were stiff and so heavy that she couldn't lift them at all. She struggled to open her heavy eyes, trying to see clearly what was going on with her. But when she opened her eyes, the surroundings were all white and there was nothing at all. Deathly silence. Where was this? Why was she here? She remembered. She sensed that something was wrong with Zhu Wu Xan and wanted to leave. But Zhu Wu Xan stretched out his hand and pulled her. There was a strange smell coming from Zhu Wu Xan's body. That smell. It was a knockout drug that could make a person unconscious. However, even if she reacted, she would not be able to. However, he still couldn't help but smell that scent. In the end, she seemed to have held on till Zhu Wu Xan left, and she fell into Diamo Chien's arms. Yes, A Chien. Wasn't she in A Chien's arms? That was absolute safety. Why did she suddenly appear here? And it's so uncomfortable. Yi Qing Luo's mind was filled with doubts, but was unable to get an answer. Just then, the vast expanse of whiteness in front of him suddenly dispersed. Then, a 10,000 feet tall cliff appeared in front of him. She didn't have time to react to what was going on. Suddenly, his body, which was so heavy that he couldn't move at all, fell down the cliff at an extremely fast speed. It was extremely fast. Yi Qing Luo could feel the sharp wind, like a knife, cutting her skin. The wind whistled past her ears, irritating her eardrums. She wanted to resist. However, his stiff body was unable to move. He took a deep breath to alleviate the pressure of falling. There was a sharp pain in her heart, causing her to be unable to concentrate. His body continued to fall, and continued to fall. It was like a bottomless abyss. No matter what, he couldn't touch the end point. Yi Qing Luo tried her best to concentrate, as her vision suddenly fixed on a certain spot, not too far away from her. An illusory figure was faintly discernible, even though her falling speed was extremely fast. But that figure was still firmly fixed in her pupils. QQ Readings Character Ranking. May I trouble my babies to help me make a heart sign and label them? Not hoping to charge into the top 40, but to be able to maintain within the top 100. Chapter 39:16. Who was that? Yi Qing Luo widened her eyes, trying to see the true face of that figure. However, the speed at which she was falling caused her eyes to be half open and blurry. Plus, that figure seemed to be shrouded in a thin layer of white mist, illusory, making that figure look like an immortal, extremely mysterious. Yi Qing Luo saw it even more unreal, just as she was feeling bewildered. That figure suddenly moved, her wrist lifted lightly, the gauze slid down, revealing her fair wrist. Her slender fingers were as smooth as jade, and there was even a thin layer of pale velvet light lingering around them. Every move, it seemed to draw out a white ray, sweeping past Yi Qing Luo's eyes. In her ear, she could faintly hear an inaudible, gentle voice. "Child, close your eyes." That voice, gentle like the wind, seeped into her heart from her eardrums. Not knowing why, Yi Qing Luo's heart actually had a kind of twitching feeling. It was as if he had been tightly gripped by an ice-cold palm, made her breathing become tight, almost like a physical instinct. She listened to that voice, closed her eyes, which was the moment she closed her eyes. Yi Qing Luo seemed to see that white ray, as fast as lightning, heading straight for her face. She couldn't react in time. Her brain suddenly flooded with a large piece of complex and obscure totem. Large piece after large piece, quickly eroding her brain. Her brain immediately seemed to be squeezed by these totem, about to explode. She wanted to hug her headache and groan, but her whole body seemed to be imprisoned by a strong force, unable to move, not knowing if it was an illusion. The moment she closed her eyes, Lin Sanjiu smiled. Her body seemed to have stopped falling, suspended in mid-air. Ugh! A painful groan came from her nose. The totem continued to surge, constantly converging towards her heart. Suddenly, Yi Qing Luo felt a scorching heat in her heart. No, more accurately, it was the profound jade heart. A burst of scorching feeling hit her heart. Following that, there was a strange aura surging around the profound jade heart. That aura was extremely unfamiliar. It didn't seem like the profound energy she was familiar with. What was going on? What on earth was this aura? What surprised Yi Qing Luo the most was her body, after coming into contact with this unfamiliar aura. There was no resistance at all. Instead, it was like an open mouth greedily absorbing this strange and unfamiliar aura. This was the first time she had encountered such a strange situation. Yi Qing Luo was startled and wanted to control her profound heart jade to prevent that unfamiliar qi from entering her body. However, there was resistance. The profound jade heart in his chest began to let out a sharp pain in protest. Her face instantly turned pale from the pain. She endured the pain with great difficulty. He quickly released his dark force to probe the strange aura in his body. However, the instant her profound energy intertwined with the unfamiliar aura, his profound energy actually took the initiative to entangle that aura. Yi Qing Luo, what the hell was going on? She wanted to get in touch with Old Man Song and ask him what was going on, but he didn't have time to connect his mental power with the azure dew bracelet. The profound heart jade suddenly sank again. The tearing pain once again messed up Yi Qing Luo's thoughts. Relax, don't resist, follow your body's instincts, accept it. That gentle voice once again sounded beside her ear. Like a spring breeze, it soothed the sharp pain in her heart. Chapter 39:17. Her heart had loosened at this moment, which also gave that unfamiliar aura a chance. That unfamiliar stream of air quickly rushed into the profound jade heart. Like a scorching fire, a scorching heat was rampaging within her profound jade heart. Again and again, it collided against her profound jade heart. This feeling was simply unspeakably bitter, but Yi Qing Luo didn't even have a chance to resist. She could only forcefully endure this unfamiliar airflow's collision with her profound jade heart, which brought about a sharp pain and a feeling of being squeezed by something. The profound energy and airflow intertwined, spreading to her limbs and bones. The two energies intertwined within her body. From time to time, it was still like calm, stagnant water, like ice, so cold that it made one shiver. And from time to time, it was like a stormy sea, surging unceasingly like a raging fire burning. The feeling of sometimes cold, sometimes hot. It made Yi Qing Luo really felt that she was about to expand with the heat and contract with the cold, and then explode with a bang. The two energies were still merging together. Yi Qing Luo, who was suffering from the torment, seemed to be able to see the two energies surging within her body, forming a huge storm within. The two energies, in the midst of intertwining and merging, became more and more vigorous. She even heard her own body, under the envelopment of the energy, emitting a kacha-kacha sound. Her bones seemed to be torn into pieces by these two energies. Yi Qing Luo felt that this was a feeling of the bones and limbs in her body being reconstructed. Just at this moment, her throat finally seemed to have opened up as she opened her mouth to let out a painful roar. Her hands suddenly clenched tightly. Boundless energy converged on her arms. The air trembled. She felt a strong and overbearing profound energy flying out from her arms. Bang, bang, bang! Deafening explosive sounds resounded all around. Yi Qing Luo swiftly opened her eyes. The profound energy encircling her body swept out even more violently. Yi Qing Luo lowered her eyes, looking at her own body. That energy that was restraining her seemed to have been shaken off by her earlier. Her entire body was light like a feather, just a slight movement. His body, which was falling from the sky, stood firmly on the vast expanse of white nothingness. Yi Qing Luo's first reaction was to search for that figure that she saw earlier, but no matter how she looked around, she had never realized that there was someone else besides her in this vast expanse of whiteness. Silence reigned. It was lifeless. In Yi Qing Luo's mind, the image of that figure earlier appeared, as he whispered beside her ear. That figure was slender and soft. That voice was as gentle as water. It gave her a very familiar and intimate feeling. He thought about it carefully. His heart suddenly tightened. It was as if he was being pricked by a needle. She slowly lowered her arms. The energy surrounding his body was still circling around excitedly. Until now, what else did Yi Qing Luo not understand? That figure was helping her reconstruct her body. After being cleansed by the marrow cleansing pill, her bones also started to reform. His entire body seemed to be filled with boundless power. That figure, he was helping her. But why? Yi Qing Luo couldn't understand. Suddenly, her ears twitched and she raised her head. In the vast expanse of whiteness, a huge palm stretched out. That hand pressed down on her. F***CK. What the hell is that? Yi Qing Luo was about to evade, but that huge palm accurately wrapped around her. It was like Buddha's five-finger mountain, firmly imprisoning her. But it was only at this moment when she was imprisoned. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes blinked as her struggling movements stopped. Chapter 39:18. Xian's hand? What on earth was going on? When that large palm had completely wrapped her up, Yi Qing Luo felt the rampant clamor in her body. The surging energy seemed to have been appeased as it settled down in her body. Following that, a man's mellow voice was heard from all directions, gentle and affectionate, calling her name over and over again. Lil Luor. Lil Luor. Lil Luor. That call seemed to be filled with endless warmth and sweetness. Yi Qing Luo's heart seemed to be touched by something. Following that large palm which was covering her body suddenly tightened. Her body also felt a huge pulling force. Bam! A buzzing sound rang beside her ear. The pulling force disappeared. It turned into the feeling of falling rapidly from a high altitude. The next moment, she suddenly opened her eyes and sat up with a whoosh. She opened her eyes wide as she looked straight ahead, panting heavily. Her body still had the feeling of falling. But what entered her eyes was a white gauze curtain with a few white tassels hanging down. It was no longer a vast expanse of whiteness. It was no longer endless silence. This place was not that lifeless place earlier. Yi Qing Luo was just about to move. Her side suddenly leaned against a warm and thick chest. Her petite body was stained with warmth. The man's long arm held her tightly in his embrace, as though he couldn't wait to rub her into his body. Lil Luo, you're finally awake. That voice in the vast expanse of whiteness was completely compatible with that voice, as it rang beside her ear at a close distance. A familiar smell, a familiar warmth, a familiar voice. It made Yi Qing Luo's consciousness gradually return. Her long, curly eyelashes fluttered. Suddenly she stretched out both hands and hugged the man in front of her. Xian. She opened her mouth. Her throat felt like it was on fire as it was hoarse. Spitting out 2 words, her throat felt as though it was cut by a knife, as the pain was unbearable. The man immediately retreated for a while, as he raised his hand to bring up the warm water beside him. Yi Qing Luo was about to take the water, but her chin was suddenly lifted by a slender finger. When he raised his head, he saw a face of peerless elegance, magnifying in his eyes. The man's deep, black eyes were filled with love. The distance between the two was getting shorter and shorter. She was so close that she could even see the ripples in the man's eyes. She could even count the man's dense and long eyelashes one by one. The next moment, a wave of warmth and softness pressed against him. The warm water poured into her mouth. The water ran down his throat. It also alleviated the burning sensation in her throat. The man left her lips again. Yi Qing Luo blushed slightly. You. Just as he opened his mouth, he spat out a word. Then, the man's lips pressed against hers again, one mouthful after another. He poured a cup of warm water into Yi Qing Luo's mouth. The man put down the cup and held her in his arms again. The warmth and taste of the man still lingered in her mouth. Yi Qing Luo's cheeks were dyed red. Shy. DMO Xian lowered his eyes to look at the person in his arms, as he gave an evil smile. Yi Qing Luo's little hand grabbed his robe, as she tugged hard, but didn't say a word, using her actions to express her unhappiness. The man smiled even more happily. When you were unconscious, I had been feeding you water like this. I'm already used to it. Why be shy? Yi Qing Luo's face turned even redder. Chapter 39:19. The man put on a serious look, used to it, the body's reflex action. Yi Qing Luo buried herself in his arms as she rolled her eyes. How many days have I been unconscious for? 2 days, DMO Xian replied. 2 days? She thought she had been unconscious for 2 months, which made DMO Xian's body's reflex action, as though he saw through Yi Qing Luo's thoughts. DMO Xian held her little body as he brought her into his arms. The young lady's body left the bed and was brought into the man's arms. Immediately after, he lowered his head and whispered softly in her ear, Used to taking care of you. This is my lifetime's habit. Yi Qing Luo's petite body trembled slightly. She was touched, and there was also the man who intentionally blew past her ear, like a feather, tickling her heartstrings. Even though they had shared the same bed for such a long time, even when facing DMO Xian, she still couldn't help but blush and palpitate, unable to resist the temptation of DMO Xian. The young lady avoided his playful lips as she stuffed her head into his shoulder, coughing lightly as she changed the topic. I remember. Wasn't I knocked out by Zhu Wu Xian's drug? Why did I wake up so quickly? Previously at Zhu Wu Xian's place, hadn't she been unconscious for nearly half a month? Moreover, she didn't notice it at all. This time, it was totally different, recalling that vast expanse of whiteness earlier, and that mysterious figure, gentle voice, and the change in her body's bones. She kept all these memories, totally different from the last time. The minute she woke up, she only remembered what happened in the upper realms passageway. Because you're too restless, so I forcefully woke you up. DMO Xian's eyes drooped as he looked at the person in his arms. The young lady buried her neck into his shoulder, revealing a fair neck, as though it was glowing. The dazzling whiteness made his gaze dim slightly. The arm which held the young lady's slender body tightened a little. Yi Qing Luo didn't notice that the man's gaze on her had changed. After she heard the man's words, she even rubbed her head against the man's chest a few times before raising her head and stared at him. "I'm very restless when I sleep." Amen, restless. The man gazed at her with his deep eyes, and even his voice became deeper and sexier. "You'll only be so tired when you sleep with me, tired to the point of being content." How would Yi Qing Luo not understand his hint? A scorching gaze. It was a deep and magnetic voice. And those words that made people blush. All of them made the young girl's heart beat as if it was tired. Her face was so hot that even her body was heating up. Her beautiful face was dyed red. It was like a slowly blooming rose, captivating the soul to the extreme. Dmo Xian abruptly tightened his arms. He was afraid that if he looked at this face that could make his heart flutter, he would be unable to control himself from wanting to hold her tightly in his arms. He hugged her tightly and said, "These 2 days, you have indeed been restless. Sometimes your body is cold, and sometimes it feels like it's burning. You even let out painful cries from time to time, as if you're in a deep sleep and in extreme pain. So, I can only enter your consciousness and wake you up. Infiltrate my consciousness." Yi Qing Luo recalled that the last thing she remembered was a huge palm floating down from the sky, imprisoning her. It was indeed because of Dmo Xian that she woke up from that vast expanse of whiteness. But what Yi Qing Luo didn't know was, although Dmo Xian's words were spoken in a light tone, but the truth was in these 2 days of deep sleep. Chapter 39:20. These 2 days had practically tortured him to the point of insanity. He was on the verge of collapse, watching Yi Qing Luo howling in pain in her sleep, looking at Yi Qing Luo's alternating between cold and hot, the agonizing look. He was powerless to solve this problem, especially after hearing that old man Song was unable to get in touch with Yi Qing Luo. It was like an invisible force, completely isolating Yi Qing Luo from the outside world. Dmo Xian's heart was even more restless. Fortunately, Lil Luo woke up. This was the method that old man Song had taught him. Sneaking into Yi Qing Luo's consciousness space, he brought her out from within. However, the dangers involved. He didn't intend to let Yi Qing Luo know. As long as his little Luo woke up safely and returned to his side, that was enough. She could feel the slight ups and downs of the man's emotions, and the strength of his hands tightening. Yi Qing Luo's chin rubbed against the man's chest. Then, she raised her head and smiled at the man's chin. Both hands also tightly encircled the man's waist. She knew what Dmo Xian was feeling right now. She also knew how Dmo Xian felt these 2 days. "Don't worry, I'm awake. I'm back. Am I not in your arms now?" The girl's soft voice was like a cat's paw, tickling the man's heart little by little. The girl's posture and angle. He could clearly see the young girl's exquisite face in the deepest part of his heart. His pupils suddenly shrank. He could vaguely see a dim stream of light moving about. In the next instant, the man raised his hand and pressed it against the back of the girl's head. "Bend over, lower your head." His thin lips pressed against the girl's lips. This kiss, it wasn't as simple as crossing the water like before. Instead, it was a fierce and passionate kiss. A man's elegant sandalwood scent filled her nose. It was as if he could knock her out at any time. Their lips were slightly cold. Everything was heating up. This kiss was domineering and filled with his wild aura. However, her movements were extremely gentle. His hands slowly wrapped around her slender waist. His palms were pressed against her waist, moving around incessantly. "Ah, Xian!" Yi Qing Luo couldn't catch her breath as she laid in the man's arms. Her hand that was holding onto the man's clothes lost its strength until Yi Qing Luo's breathing tightened. Only then did the man release her. He hugged her tightly with both hands. His chin rested on the girl's slender shoulder, and his husky voice carried a hint of ambiguity. "Be good, just let me hug you." His voice was deep and magnetic. The elegant sandalwood fragrance had almost confused Yi Qing Luo's consciousness, especially that peerless beauty, the most bewitching face which was so close to him. Yi Qing Luo totally had no resistance at all as she sank into the beauty. The man's deep voice was slightly panting. It was very seductive. However, the man just hugged her obediently. How would Yi Qing Luo not know that Dmo Xian was forcefully suppressing his desire for her? This man, although he usually flirted with her, took advantage of her and said embarrassing things to her. But no matter what, she was the center of everything he did. No matter how uncomfortable he was only concerned about her. What a fool! Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up into a sweet and blissful smile. She raised her hand and cupped the man's cheek. The man's face was hot. Just when she touched him, she could clearly feel the slight stiffness in her palm. Chapter 39:21. That peerless face was fully reflected in Yi Qing Luo's pupils. The man's eyes were like a silver needle, piercing into her heart. The light in her charming eyes became softer. Her slender fingers gently traced the contours of the man's face, from his eyebrows to his eyes to his nose, and finally her fingertips landed on his rosy lips. Yi Qing Luo's charming eyes rose slightly, hooking into a coquettish arc. Her pair of fox-like eyes stared at his thin lips without blinking. Following that, the corners of her lips curled up frivolously. Her voice also became soft and charming. "Since you flirted with someone, you should take responsibility till the end." The words fell. She had already leaned forward and covered the man's lips. The man's initiative and her initiative were totally different concepts. When the young lady's sweet breath approached, her gentle words were already a blatant hint. The man's eyes instantly turned pitch black. He held the young lady tightly and pressed her into his arms, turning from guest to host. From his throat, a low and sinister threat came out. "You asked for it. When the time comes, don't beg for mercy." That mellow voice, because of the young lady's initiative, had been tainted with a thin layer of hoarseness. Lingering and charming, the warmth rose. Gulp! Just at this moment, suddenly a sound that spoiled the mood rang in the room. The two of them, who were stuck close to each other, immediately froze. Gulp, gulp! Following that sound rang again. Dmo Xian half propped up his body, slightly glanced sideways. His line of sight fell on the young lady's flat abdomen. The young lady's robe was in a mess, revealing her fair skin. When Dmo Xian's line of sight swept over, Yi Qing Luo let out an "ah," then pushed away the man who was half propped up, lifted the quilt, and covered her head. Vaguely, she could still hear the man's low chuckle. Yi Qing Luo clutched the quilt. She couldn't wait to bang her head into the quilt. So shameful. She took the initiative to seduce Dmo Xian. She didn't expect her stomach to be so disappointing. At this juncture, it was actually so hungry that it was growling. Did it need to be so embarrassing? Mushroom. Blue skinny. Yi Qing Luo silently cursed her stomach 100 times in her heart. Suddenly, she felt a broad palm covering her quilt. Her body stiffened. The man's mellow and smiling voice floated down from above. "It's my fault. I forgot that you've been unconscious for 2 days. You must be hungry." Following the man's words, she could feel the man slowly bending down to the side of the blanket and talking to her at a close distance. Yi Qing Luo's cheeks turned even redder. She clutched the quilt and remained motionless. "Good girl, let's go eat first." Dmo Xian coaxed. Under Dmo Xian's half-coaxing and half-dragging, Yi Qing Luo slowly lifted up a corner of the blanket, revealing a guilty little face. "Then you? Are you really all right?" Previously he had endured it, but she insisted on taking the initiative. This was what it meant by flirting and not wanting to take responsibility, Dmo Xian lifted the blanket and carried her up from the bed. As the girl screamed in surprise, she hooked her arms around his neck. He chuckled and whispered into her ear, "It doesn't matter. After you're full, it'll be my turn to feed me." Yi Qing Luo. She really shouldn't feel guilty. Of course. What DMO Xian said about being fed by the girl after he was full was finally left unsettled. Because after Yi Qing Luo had freshened up and followed DMO Xian out for a meal. Chapter 39:22. After finding out that the reason why Yi Qing Luo was unconscious was because of that fellow, Zhu Wu Exan, he immediately exploded. Old Lai, in particular, slammed the table, his beard widened. "What? That kid actually dared to drug you?" "You just wait. I'll bring the Hell Palace's people right now and screw up his red clear pavilion." With that, Lao Lai rolled up his sleeves and walked toward the door. He took a few steps. Sensing that something was amiss, Zhang Xian halted his footsteps once more and turned to look at the group of people staring at him. Even as he rolled up his sleeves, he asked, "Aren't you all going to stop me?" Everyone shook their heads in unison. Even the person involved, Yi Qing Luo, had an incomparable tacit understanding as she shook her head. "Not stopping. Not stopping. How can we stop Old Lai's decision? Go on, I have high hopes for you." Lao Lai. Both of them stared at each other for a few seconds. Old Lai slowly put down his sleeves and coughed softly. "Forget it. Looking at you, you don't seem to want to take revenge on that brat. I'm too lazy to move my old bones." As he spoke, he slowly moved back to his seat. Zhou Emo clicked his tongue and lazily lifted his eyelids. He cast a sidelong glance at Old Lai and sneered. "This young master has heard that this Hell Palace is a madhouse, a gathering place for lunatics. Why would lunatics also be afraid of Zhu Wuxin?" Lao Lai's eyes widened. "I'm scared. What's there to be afraid of? I didn't want to put Madame D in a difficult position." "Oh." Zhou Emo raised his eyebrows and dragged out the last syllable. Old Lai's face was flushed red with anger as he pressed the table and stood up, pointing at Yi Qing Luo. "Red Clearness Pavilion. Red Clearness Pavilion." Just by hearing this name, you can tell that this Red Clearness Pavilion was built for Madame D. One must know that this Red Clear Pavilion was a mysterious force that had been famous in the upper realm since a few years ago. Several years ago. A few years ago, Zhu Wuxin had chosen this name for Lady D. Didn't this mean that Lady D had a good relationship with Zhu Wuxin? If I go to the Red Clear Pavilion and cause trouble for Madame D, I'll feel so wronged. Old Lai rattled off a string of words. There was no pause at all. As soon as he finished speaking, the atmosphere in the hall became heavy. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop on the ground. The crowd sighed helplessly as they silently mourned for him as they shook their heads. "Whether Qing Luo will find trouble with you, we don't know, but what we know is now you're in deep trouble." Lao Lai suddenly felt a chill on his back as he felt an inexplicable chill. His neck twisted stiffly. She then met with DMO Xian's icy cold eyes. Lao Lai's mouth trembled, and he immediately gave in. Yi Qing Luo naturally felt the low pressure from the man beside her. She rolled her eyes at Old Lai and stretched out her little hand to hold DMO Xian's large palm as she said, "Don't listen to his nonsense. I only found out that Red Clear Pavilion's pavilion master is Zhu Wu Exan during the auction." She paused slightly and continued, "As for why he named it Red Clearness Pavilion, I'm not too sure, but—" Her brows sunk slightly as her gaze turned slightly gloomy. This time round, he still chose to stand on the opposite side of me and made use of my trust towards him, attempting to repeat the same trick on me. His trust in me has already turned to zero. Trusting someone was very difficult. Bit by bit, slowly accumulating trust. There was a possibility that because of one matter, it would completely crumble. Chapter 39:23. Lil Luo'er. DMO Xian looked at the young lady's sunken expression. although her head was lowered and her fine black hair covered her expression. But Dmo Xian could clearly feel that Yi Qingluo's current mood was very gloomy. His long arm scooped and brought the young lady into his arms. Perhaps his obsession with you is too deep and he was bewitched by secluded palace. Yi Qingluo laid in Dmo Xian's arms openly, feeling the warmth from his body, soothing the gloomy mood in her heart. She moved her little head in his arms. Her chin rested on his chest. She raised her head slightly and suddenly laughed. He's your love rival. Why are you still helping him to speak up? According to Dmo Xian's character, she felt repelled towards Zhu Wuexan. He should be happier than anyone else. But he actually helped Zhu Wuexan to speak up? TSK, did the sun rise from the west today? Dmo Xian's slender fingers pinched her nose as he gently pinched it. Following that, he bent over slightly. That handsome face came close to Yi Qingluo's face. The surrounding crowd. Why did it feel like they were being neglected? But luckily, the two of them, who were extremely intimate, still had some conscience. They didn't really engage in lovey-dovey activities in front of everyone. Dmo Xian's face stopped at a distance of about a fist away from Yi Qingluo. His crimson thin lips curled up slightly as he revealed a devilish smile. His slender fingers slowly slid from her nose to the area between her brows as he gently rubbed it. I just don't want to see you frowning here, showing a worried look. Yi Qingluo's heart suddenly soared. A faint smile unknowingly appeared in her eyes. Her arms hooked onto Dmo Xian's neck as she smiled like a flower. Seeing this face of yours has healed my body and mind. The two of them smiled at each other as their eyes were filled with tenderness and sweetness. The surrounding crowd. All right, although the two of them weren't really lovey-dovey, but this feeling, as compared to lovey-dovey, was even more stimulating. But Yi Qingluo's mood indeed rose by a lot. In the main hall, everyone was bustling. However, in a dark corner not far away, there seemed to be a layer of frost covering it. Some of the servants of the Qiao mansion who passed by felt an inexplicable shiver. In the dark, a red figure was faintly discernible. The man's face was as cold as ice, without the slightest emotion, especially those eyes that were like stagnant water. It was as if he would freeze to death under his ice with just a glance. He wasn't close to the hall, but he wasn't far either. He could clearly hear all the voices in the hall. In his mind, the girl's clear voice kept repeating over and over again, his trust in me has been reduced to 0. Trust? Did she no longer trust him? He just wanted to keep her by his side. He just didn't want her to treat him so coldly again. Obviously, she belonged to him, didn't she? Did he really do something wrong? Zhu Wuxin's hands that were hanging by his side slowly clenched. Blue veins popped out of his fist. It was as if he was suppressing some kind of emotion in his heart. Suddenly, his hand opened up as his vision swiftly turned towards a certain direction behind him. His eyes, which were like still water, turned into a sharp blade as it shot out. Young Patriarch Chu, don't, it's me. Chapter 39:24. Zhu Wuxin's expression didn't change at all when he saw who it was. That slender and soft figure leaned against Zhu Wuexan's body. Young master, Zhu! Scram. The slender figure had yet to approach him. Zhu Wuxin flicked his sleeve, avoiding the woman's approach. An invisible wave of air isolated the woman a step away from him. The woman didn't get angry. Instead, she looked at him with a smile. Young Master Chu, why are you hiding here alone? Don't worry, as long as you follow the instructions of the revered Yi Qingluo. Will definitely belong to you. Zhu Wuxin's eyes flashed. The lady naturally didn't miss his reaction as she smiled delicately. You must know, even if Yi Qingluo is with the Overlord now, but they will absolutely not be able to walk to the end. Only young Patriarch Chu, who has been recognized by the Overlord, is Yi Qingluo's future husband. Zhu Wuxin's pupils suddenly constricted. He didn't even look at the woman. He moved. It disappeared into thin air. Not even a red afterimage was left behind. The woman quietly looked at the horizon in the direction that Zhu Wuxin had disappeared. The smile on his face faded, and his eyes were like those of a venomous snake, flickering with an insidious ruthlessness. He clenched his fists tightly. Yi Qing Luo! Yi Qing Luo! Whether it was Di Zun or Zhu Wuxin, all of them were circling around Yi Qing Luo. What was so good about her? *TCH. The atmosphere in the room was still warm. The silent Gui Wu, who had been leaning against the corner, suddenly raised his head and looked at Yi Qing Luo. His gaze was direct, just as he was about to look at Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo had already sensed his line of sight and met Ghost Marshall's gaze in puzzlement. Gui Wu slowly walked towards Yi Qing Luo until he stood in front of her. Yi Qing Luo was nestled in Dmo Xian's arms. Gui Wu stood up. He was also facing Dmo Xian, but Gui Wu's line of sight, from the start till the end, had remained on Yi Qing Luo. It was a young and handsome face, but those eyes were full of hardships and complicated emotions that no one could see through. Yi Qing Luo felt uncomfortable being stared at. She shifted her body and adjusted her position in Dmo Xian's arms as she coughed lightly. "Ghost Martial Master?" There were no ripples in Ghost Martial's deep and cold eyes. However, the words that came out of his mouth were like a raging storm. "Your body has undergone a transformation." Dumbfounded expressions appeared on everyone's faces, as they did not understand the meaning behind Gui Wu's words. Yi Qing Luo was slightly startled. She naturally knew what the change that Gui Wu was talking about was. She was surprised. Gui Wu had actually seen through this point. Gui Wu stared at Yi Qing Luo for some time before he suddenly narrowed his eyes in an unfathomable manner. "Looks like the 2 days you were in a coma, not only did it not affect your body instead, it allowed your body to improve. What kind of riddle are you guys playing?" Zhou raised his red phoenix eyes and asked. Gui Wu looked at Zhou and said indifferently, "Student Yi Qing Luo's body has undergone transformation. Now her bone structure has already broken away from the mortal body and can withstand even more powerful than an overlord. Transform, leaving the mortal body." Was he talking about Yi Qing Luo? Everyone's gazes shifted onto Yi Qing Luo in unison. That blatant gaze made Yi Qing Luo burrow into Dmo Xian's arms, and even took up Dmo Xian's arm to block in front of her. Chapter 39:25. Everyone shook their heads in unison. I have never seen a beauty who has left her mortal body. Yi Qing Luo. She couldn't be bothered with them as she set her sight on Gui Wu. It seemed that Gui Wu was very clear about the transformation of the bone frame. After pondering for a moment, she asked, "Master Gui Wu, from what you've said, does this mean that my body can now withstand even more powerful strength?" She paused slightly and continued with an example. "For example, if I use the power of the divine relic?" Gui Wu met Yi Qing Luo's vague, hopeful gaze and nodded slowly. Yi Qing Luo's eyes lit up. Previously, she had forcefully used the power of the divine relic to raise her strength in a short period of time to tide over the crisis. The price she had to pay was the overdraft of her body, and the divine phoenix profound heart, jade in her body, was likely to cause a backlash. All these reasons stemmed from the fact that her body could not withstand the overload of power. Now her body, her bone frame, had been reconstructed. All the impurities had been eliminated, separated from the mortal body. After withstanding the power of the divine relic and even more powerful forces, her body could finally bear it, but under Yi Qing Luo's bright eyes, Gui Wu suddenly said, "Don't be happy too early. Even if your bone frame has been transformed, it doesn't mean that you can mess around." When she was still a mortal body, Yi Qing Luo time and time again did something which made one worried. If she relied on her body to withstand the powerful forces to mess around, no matter how solid the foundation was, it would be exhausted over and over again. Yi Qing Luo's spirit would not be able to bear it. I know. Yi Qing Luo nodded seriously. I won't mess around. Everyone made a tisk sound. Apparently no one believed Yi Qing Luo's guarantee. DMO Xian stretched out his hand and knocked on her head. You'd better remember what you said now. Yi Qing Luo felt pain as she turned her head and stared at him. Why don't you believe what I said? DMO Xian sneered. Do you think that you believe what you said? Yi Qing Luo. All right, based on her previous behavior. She didn't believe it herself. DMO Xian dangerously narrowed his eyes and held her chin. Why? Tacit approval? That deep voice carried an obvious threat. Yi Qing Luo was forced to look him in the eye. She didn't even dare to avoid his eyes. Her long eyelashes blinked for a while, but DMO Xian still maintained that dangerous smile. Her honey trap did not work at all. Therefore, he decisively gave in. How could there be a tacit agreement? This is a very serious expression. I will definitely remember what I'm saying now. DMO Xian seemed to believe it as he nodded lightly. Yi Qing Luo let out a sigh of relief, just as she was about to squirm out from DMO Xian's embrace. Her waist tightened, and her delicate body was pressed into the man's arms again. Then he lowered his magnetic voice and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, If you can't remember it, I'll use my own method to make you remember it, his last 4 words. He even deliberately lowered his voice. That magnetic, seductive, and drawn-out voice carried another kind of emotion. Yi Qing Luo's face suddenly flushed red. What a shameless man! Everyone was already used to their little interactions and didn't notice Yi Qing Luo's blushing face. Chapter 39:26. Yi Qing Luo was stunned and hurriedly stood up from DMO Xian's arms. Yes! Old Master Huangfu wants to bring those 3 back to the Huangfu family. She wondered how Pei Xing and Old Master Huangfu had developed over the past 2 days. She was not worried about Pei Sheng's safety. 2 days ago, the assassins sent by Huangfu Fengyan failed to assassinate Pei Sheng, startling the old man. Even if the 3 of them wanted to make another move, they did not have the opportunity. Of course, if they made a move against Pei Sheng at this critical juncture, he was definitely digging his own grave. No matter how stupid they were, they would never do that. Moreover, that kid, Pei Sheng, had already evolved now, and he knew how to transform into a white lotus flower to protect himself and Gu Zishi, so that he could strive for the greatest benefits for himself and Gu Zishi. Therefore, a person's growth had to depend on their own efforts. If she interfered too many times, it would only make Pei Sheng more dependent on her. In the end, no one gave him any advice, and he fell into a state of confusion. As though she could see through Yi Qing Luo's thoughts, Mo Yuing opened her round, adorable big eyes and opened her mouth. They get along very well, and I can tell that old Master Huangfu sincerely wants to bring Pei Sheng home. Yi Qing Luo nodded. Let's go take a look. Perhaps we can still make it in time to send old Master off. In next to no time, the group arrived at the treasure gathering exchange. After 2 days of repair, the houses that had been destroyed by the assassins had been temporarily repaired, so it wasn't too messy. Just as the group walked into Treasure Gathering Hall, a slender figure stood in the middle of the hall. That person had a tall and straight posture, a grave and stern face, and an outstanding temperament. He just stood there in silence. It could attract everyone's attention. Yi Qing Luo and the rest naturally set their sights on that person first. At that moment, everyone's expression changed. Kitty, Li was the most impatient. She suddenly jumped out of Zomo's arms and pounced towards that person. You actually dare to appear here! Kitty will scratch you to death. Little wild cat. Zomo's expression changed slightly, and he immediately chased after it. Before that person could make a move, he pulled Kitty Lee into his arms. With a quick roll, he dodged the man's attack. Meanwhile, a black figure moved and quickly appeared in front of Zhou Mo. With a raise of his hand, a black light condensed. The two forces collided, creating traces of electricity. It was tight and gradually dissipated. The shock waves in the air gradually subsided. This unforeseen event caused the atmosphere in the hall to become even more tense. The group of people stared at that person with tensed emotions. The man turned around and looked at them expressionlessly. Finally, a pair of cold eyes that were as calm as still water fell onto Yiqing Luo. "Why are you guys here?" Suddenly, Huang Fujintian walked out from the inner court with a smile on his face. The smile on his face was very sincere. His previous majesty was nowhere to be seen. As he walked out, he smiled at the expressionless man and said, "Pavilion Master Chu, I'll have to trouble you to wait for me." "It doesn't matter." The man's thin lips moved slightly as he spat out these 3 words. Huang Fujintian was still smiling. As he smiled, he felt that the atmosphere in the hall wasn't right. He took a look at the expressionless man beside him and looked at the tensed-up group of people who were glaring angrily. "Cough! You guys should all know each other. This is Red Clear Pavilion's Pavilion Master, Chu Wuexen. This side are that fellow Peisheng's friends." Chapter 39-27. After the introduction, he eased the atmosphere and continued. "I heard that Miss Yi and Pavilion Master Chu are old acquaintances, so I don't think I need to introduce you any further." "No need." Zhu Wuexan stared at Yiqing Luo. "I understand her better than anyone else." Huang Fujintian, "Why does it feel like the atmosphere is getting weirder and weirder?" Yiqing Luo and the rest looked at Zhu Wuexan warily. He truly hadn't expected Chu Wuxin to appear at the treasure-gathering exchange. Moreover, it seemed like they were here to cause trouble. Yiqing Luo had not expected to meet Zhu Wuexan here. She thought that Zhu Wuxin would not dare to appear before her in the near future. What astonished Yiqing Luo the most was Chu Wuxin had actually changed out of his usual red clothes. Today he was dressed in a white robe, which made him look even more cold and aloof. The unapproachable aura around him was even more obvious. To be honest, although Chu Wuxin was dressed in red, his temperament did not seem out of place. But it was obvious that he was more suited for white. This color was too compatible with him. However, Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly. There was an indescribable feeling of unease in his heart. If I remember correctly, Chu Wuxin had always been dressed in red. This was because the original owner, Yiqing Luo, had once said to let him always wear red clothes. Chu Wuxin kept this in mind. He also used his actions to show how much he valued the original owner. But now, she had actually swapped out her red dress. This represented that he had let go of Yiqing Luo. She was not reminiscing about Zhu Wuxin's feelings for her. It was not because Zhu Wuxin had let go of this relationship and felt that it was a pity. Instead, somehow he felt that something was wrong. Zhu Wuexan's sudden change was really too strange. Would someone as stubborn as Chu Wuxin really give up so easily? Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips slightly as her little hand gently held the man's big palm beside her. She raised her head slightly and looked at the man. He also transmitted the uneasiness and doubts in his heart. The girl subconsciously relied on him. The man, who was not in a good mood, suddenly smiled. He held the young girl's small hand. His long and narrow peach blossom eyes were filled with a faint smile. With one hand, he pulled her into his embrace and soothed the uneasiness in the girl's heart. When the girl's breathing calmed down, Dmo Xian then slowly raised his head. His long and narrow peach blossom eyes no longer had the tenderness from earlier, as he calmly and indifferently looked at Zhu Wuexan. "Pavilion Lord Chu, long time no see." Zhu Wuxin did not respond, but his line of sight was fixed on the man's hand, which was holding the girl tightly. DMO, Xian, shot a glance at his own hand, which was wrapped around the young lady's body as his thin lips curled up slightly, containing some ridicule. Since Pavilion Lord Chu said that you understand Lil Luo, don't tell me that you don't know that Lil Luo doesn't want to see you at all? Zhu Wuxian's eyes finally reacted, like ripples on the surface of water. But in the next instant, everything returned to normal. Huang Fuzhentian realized it. The two sides were not on good terms with each other. He, who was stuck between the two of them, felt a little embarrassed. Fortunately, Pei Sheng and Gu Zishi sensed that the atmosphere outside was not right and came out in time. Chapter 39:28. Zhu Wuxian returned to Heaven Realm? In that case, Zhu Wuxian was indeed someone from Heaven Realm? Then why did he hide in Nirvana Realm? Back then, he was pursued by others and hid in Yi Qing Luo's courtyard, creating a past with Yi Qing Luo. Later on in Nirvana Realm, he established his own force. What identity did he have, at this moment, to rush back to Heaven Realm? Was it because of her, or was it a part of Secluded Palace's plan? Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased tightly as her suspicions towards Zhu Wuxian grew. 2 days ago, he drugged her. He probably wanted to bring her back to Heaven Realm. You woke up very quickly. Zhu Wuxian's icy cold voice interrupted Yi Qing Luo's thoughts. It also interrupted her probing gaze. That drug won't have any effect on your body. I won't do anything to hurt you. Zhu Wuxian looked at her fixedly as he explained word by word. I came to treasure gathering because I wanted to wait for you. Not waiting for Yi Qing Luo to reply. Kitty Li's face had already turned red from anger as she flailed around in Zomo's arms. Pooey! What won't hurt sister? What you did is hurting sister, drugging sister, and still dare to appear in front of sister. Frivolous man. Don't stop Kitty. Kitty wants to scratch him to death. Zhu Wuxian didn't even blink his eyes. He turned a deaf ear to Kitty Li's accusations. His gaze had been fixed on Yi Qing Luo from the start till the end. His gaze was calm without any fluctuation of emotions. But Yi Qing Luo could clearly feel that the gaze he shot towards her was scorching hot. She frowned slightly as her expression turned cold. What are you waiting for me for? I want to speak to you alone, Zhu Wuxian said. No way. Kitty Li rejected without thinking. Zhu Wuxian looked at Yi Qing Luo, quietly, waiting for her reply. Yi Qing Luo's lips pursed even tighter. The man beside her suddenly pushed her body forward. Yi Qing Luo was stunned as she looked at him sideways, but towards DMO, Xian's doting eyes. Like obsidian, it shone with an eye-catching radiance. Looking over, what was reflected in his eyes was her face. He raised his hand and brushed away the stray hair on the girl's cheek. The person who understands you best is me. Go. Beside her cheek was the touch of a man's fingertips. It carried a man's elegant sandalwood scent. Her eyelashes fluttered. Suddenly, his small body leaned forward. She hooked her wrist around the man's neck. She abruptly pulled the man down, then tiptoed and planted a kiss on his lips. The girl's eyes were full of smiles. Good boy. She withdrew her hand and took a few steps back from DMO Xian. The moment he turned around, the expression on his face became indifferent. All right. This word was a reply to Zhu Wuxin. After saying those words, she took the lead and walked toward the inner courtyard. Zhu Wuxian was stunned for a moment. To be more precise, it was from the moment DMO Xian hugged Yi Qing Luo tightly. That indistinctly provocative sentence, the person who understands you the most is me. His thoughts were a little absent-minded, especially when he saw Yi Qing Luo taking the initiative to kiss DMO Xian. His heart felt like it was being torn apart by something, until the young lady's figure disappeared from his sight. Only then did Zhu Wuxian's calm eyes ripple. Following that, he chased up to Yi Qing Luo's footsteps. At the same time, Zoemo Xian raised his devilish phoenix eyes and was about to tease, "Yo, I didn't expect our Overlord to be so magnanimous. He actually..." Chapter 39:29. Because the air pressure in the lobby instantly turned frosty. The air seemed to have frozen. Everyone couldn't help but shiver. They all turned to look at the Dizun, who was sitting stiffly at the side with a gloomy face. That handsome and elegant face was covered with frost. His entire body was burning with an aura that was about to explode. Everyone, in front of Yi Qing Luo, his magnanimity and generosity were all an act. In her courtyard, Yi Qing Luo stopped in her tracks as she turned her head to look at Zhu Wuexin. "What do you want to say?" He turned his head. Coincidentally, he bumped into a white robe. This was the first time he saw Zhu Wuxin wearing white, so he was not used to it. Her momentary daze was seen by Zhu Wuxin. The lines on Zhu Wuxian's face clearly softened. Even his gaze towards Yi Qing Luo had turned gentle. "I know. You don't want to see me. Why did you still appear when you knew? Do you really think that I really don't dare to make a move against you?" Yi Qing Luo's expression turned cold. Zhu Wuxin shook his head. "I want to see you," Yi Qing Luo replied. "Just because you want to see me, I must see you. I'm going to Heaven Realm for a period of time, and there's a possibility that I won't be able to see you for a very long period of time." Zhu Wuxian seemed as though he couldn't hear the impatience in Yi Qing Luo's tone. While he was talking, his eyes were fixed on Yi Qing Luo without blinking. His tone was sincere and serious. When Yi Qing Luo heard that, her eyes suddenly narrowed. "Zhu Wuxian, you're going to Heaven Realm. Is it because of secluded Darkness Palace's plan?" Zhu Wuxin opened his mouth, wanting to speak. But after meeting Yi Qing Luo's smiling, yet not smiling expression, the words at the tip of his tongue were stuck in his throat. He lowered his eyes slightly, avoiding Yi Qing Luo's gaze. "I know you don't like people lying to you, so this question, I'm unable to answer you." In other words, I guessed correctly. Yi Qing Luo scoffed lightly. "Zhu Wuxian, didn't you say that you've already cancelled the collaboration with the Palace of Darkness? Why did you return to the Palace of Darkness?" Clearly, her voice was very calm. Even his tone did not fluctuate in the slightest. Yet, it brought with it an extremely oppressive feeling. Zhu Wuxin's head was still lowered, not looking at Yi Qing Luo's expression. Evidently, he had decided to remain silent. Yi Qing Luo scoffed lightly. If Zhu Wuxian was unwilling to answer, no matter how she asked, Zhu Wuxian would not answer. She simply couldn't be bothered to communicate with Zhu Wuxin anymore. "Since you don't want to talk, you specially came to find me just to bid farewell?" "Yes." This time, Zhu Wuxin responded. He even raised his head. "Also, I want to tell you," Zhu Wuxin pursed his thin lips. This was something he had never done before. Yi Qing Luo could tell that he was nervous. Zhu Wuxian was silent for several breaths of time. Then he continued, "Previously, I did something that made you unhappy, but I do not regret it. Because I want you to accompany me." Yi Qing Luo laughed in anger. "You want me to accompany you, so you make use of my trust in you to drug me?" "Zhu Wuxin, you claim that you understand me, but are you sure that you really understand me?" Zhu Wuxin continued to stare at her with his extremely dark eyes. After Yi Qing Luo finished her words, he then shook his head as his voice became gentler. "I don't regret what I did. The only thing I regret is to make use of your trust." Yi Qing Luo laughed out of anger once again. She expressed that she really couldn't understand Zhu Wuxian's train of thought. "I only want to tell you, everything that I did was not entirely for myself." Chapter 39:30. What do you mean? What did he mean by be careful of the people around her? The people around her were either lovers or brothers. They had gone through life and death together. They were all people she could absolutely trust. Zhu Wuxian didn't say much. He raised his hand and stretched it towards Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo was astute as she avoided Zhu Wuxian's hand with a vigilant look. Zhu Wuxian's hand froze in midair. Several breaths later, his slender fingers retracted one by one. His dark and gloomy eyes looked at her with an obvious sadness, as though Yi Qing Luo's actions had hurt him. But Yi Qing Luo could only capture this little bit, a peculiar emotion. By the time she wanted to delve deeper into it, Zhu Wuxian had already leapt onto the top of the wall. His white robe fluttered, showing his cold and aloof arrogance like a winter plum. He stood on top of the wall and gazed deeply at Yi Qing Luo for a moment. Following that, he had already disappeared from Yi Qing Luo's vision. Yi Qing Luo's brows knitted tightly as she retracted her gaze. What did Zhu Wuxian mean? Why did he say such things to her out of nowhere? Based on Zhu Wuxian's character, he would say such things. It shouldn't be as simple as sowing discord. He must have heard some news from the secluded palace. She didn't know what was wrong with Zhu Wuxian, since he had already appeared to remind her. Couldn't he just make things clear before he left? It was better not to say anything than to leave half of it. She was cursing silently in her heart. Suddenly, she felt a tight grip on her waist. A scorching and wide embrace enveloped her completely. Her body was being held tightly by someone. On top of her head, there was a heavy object as a mellow voice with a smile yet not a smile floated down. He's already gone far away and you still haven't regained your senses. Could it be that you can't bear for him to leave? That voice obviously had a hint of laughter, but Yi Qing Luo heard the sarcasm in it. Yi Qing Luo hurriedly stretched out her hand and hugged the person's waist. No, I'm just thinking about what he said earlier. On top of her head, the man sneered. His laughter was a little cold. Yi Qing Luo rubbed against his arms, but it wasn't able to alleviate the man's gloomy atmosphere. Pei Sheng and the others had already walked in. On seeing Yi Qing Luo, he cried out and started to complain. Luo, Don't think that the Overlord appeared to be very magnanimous. The minute you and Zhu Wuxian arrived at the inner courtyard, his entire person was like a huge ice mountain. We're about to be frozen into ice. As soon as he finished speaking, Dmo Xian shot him a glare. Pei Sheng was so frightened by his sharp gaze that she immediately covered her mouth. Nestled in Dmo Xian's arms, Yi Qing Luo sighed helplessly. Her small hands clutched Dmo Xian's clothes as she slowly raised her head. Even without Pei Sheng's explanation, she was well aware of it. Dmo Xian was the king of vinegar. How could he really not mind her being alone with Zhu Wuxin? He dotingly took the initiative to let her speak to Zhu Wuxin alone. He just didn't want to make things difficult for her. Of course, it was also because he believed in the relationship between her and Zhu Wuxin. But Yi Qing Luo also knew that he was feeling rather unhappy. Just like now, after sensing that Zhu Wuxin's aura had disappeared, filled with unhappiness, he looked for her to pacify him. All right, my obedient Xian. Her hand followed his clothes and stretched out to his face. Following that, her fingers pinched. Pulling the corners of the man's lips, he pulled out a smile. My Xian is even more enchanting when he smiles. Chapter 39-31. Yi Qing Luo. A man who couldn't satisfy his desires was really scary. Speaking of which, what did Zhu Wuxian tell you? Is there a need to whisper? Zhou Emo was very curious. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips and shook her head. It's still those ridiculous words. Don't take it to heart. Huang Fu Jintian had a dazed look. Didn't Pavilion Master Zhu specially accompany me back to the Heaven Realm? One person left just like that? Then why was Zhu Wuxian squatting at the treasure gathering so early in the morning? Accompanying is just an excuse. Zhu Wuxian is obviously waiting for little Qing Luo. Zhou Emo clicked his tongue as his devilish phoenix eyes rose, as he continued to say as though he wished for the world to be in chaos. You are just a springboard. Huang Fu Jintian. Was it possible that taking the benevolent route wasn't able to control the youngsters? Yi Qing Luo stared at Zhou Mo, afraid that Zhou Mo would say something shocking as she hurriedly changed the topic. Old Master Huangfu, when do you intend to leave? Immediately. When Huangfu Jintian said this, the expression on his face had some slight changes. He took a deep look at Pei Sheng and said, All along I wanted to thank you personally. If it wasn't for the fact that you helped that lad, I'm afraid that I wouldn't be able to see that lad today. He paused slightly and continued, and that day, Pei Sheng suffered an assassination attempt. I will handle it and absolutely will not let Pei Sheng suffer any grievances. She could tell that Huangfu Jintian really couldn't bear to part with Pei Sheng. These 2 days, the relationship between the both of them had deepened. Even Pei Sheng was willing to change his way of addressing him as grandfather. Yi Qing Luo smiled slightly. Huangfu Jintian spoke solemnly. Miss Yi, gathering treasure is Pei Sheng's wish and also his dream, so for the next few days, I'll have to trouble you. Saying that, Huangfu Jintian straightened his body as he slowly bowed towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Yi Qing Luo hurriedly stretched out her hand as she stopped Huangfu Jintian. The current Pei Sheng really doesn't need us to worry about him. Just let him grow up on his own. Yes, grandfather, don't worry about me. Pei Sheng went up and held Huangfu Jintian's hand. The both of them exchanged a smile. This heartwarming scene was heartwarming. However, there were also people who were so angry that they gritted their teeth. Yi Qing Luo's sharp senses detected a strange fluctuation in the air. She gave him a sidelong glance. He saw 3 figures standing behind the temporarily built withered tree. Huangfu Fengyan was glaring at them with hatred. The fierceness and hatred in his eyes. It was as if it wished to swallow them whole. A powerful aura spread out. Naturally, it attracted the attention of the others. When Huangfu Jintian looked over and saw Huangfu Fengyan's savage and warped face, his face instantly darkened. Evil creature! Huangfu Jintian was unable to restrain his rage and grunted coldly. What are you glaring at? Did I punish you wrongly? Huangfu Fengyan instinctively shrunk her neck when she heard Huangfu Jintian's voice, and she hid behind Big Brother and Third Brother. Huangfu Chi Fei's lips curled into a warm smile. No matter what grandfather does, it's always right. This time's matter is indeed Fengyan's fault. Towards grandfather's punishment, Fengyan doesn't dare to not accept it. Saying that, he lowered his head slightly and looked at Huangfu Fengyan as he appeased her in a warm voice. Fengyan, am I right? Chapter 39-32. Until Huangfu Fengyan was dragged out by Huangfu Qifei. Yi Qing Luo then noticed. Huangfu Fengyan's temperament had undergone a huge change. Just 2 days ago when he saw her, she was still arrogant and domineering. It was as if she did not take these people from the Earth domain seriously and had a high and mighty attitude. But now, her entire body was shrouded in a layer of deathly aura. There was a deathly aura between his brows. The light in his eyes dimmed a lot. Wait a minute. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes slightly as she carefully sized up Huangfu Fengyan. After noticing something, she suddenly laughed out loud. His curved eyebrows were filled with mockery. Huangfu Fengyan's expression instantly darkened. His eyes were filled with uncontrollable resentment. If it wasn't for Huangfu Qifei holding her wrist tightly, she would have died. Perhaps Huangfu Fengyan almost couldn't control the anger in her heart as she pounced towards Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo seemed as though she couldn't see Huangfu Fengyan's madness. His laughter became more and more mocking. He didn't expect the old man to be so ruthless. The old man actually directly crippled more than half of Huangfu Fengyan's profound rank. Yes, most of them. Previously, Huangfu Fengyan's talent was passable, and she had the Huangfu bloodline. Moreover, she had been supported by many resources since she was young. Her profound rank was at least at the 7th or 8th level of the Sage Profound Realm. But the current Huangfu Fengyan judging from the fluctuations of the profound waves on her body. I'm afraid he's only hovering around the sky profound realm. In fact, it was even showing signs of slipping. Profound sky, if they were placed in the nirvana realm, they would be the best among the geniuses. However, Huangfu Fengyan was someone from the heaven realm. In the heavenly realm, even the lowly people were like dust. Their strength was probably above Huangfu Fengyan's. To the arrogant Huangfu Fengyan, this move was indeed the cruelest punishment. It was no wonder that Huangfu Fengyan was looking at them as if they were her father's murderer. No, even killing one's own father wouldn't have such a huge grudge. Slut! Looking at Yi Qing Luo's ridiculing smile, Huangfu Fengyan was so infuriated that her eyes turned red. She struggled to pounce towards Yi Qing Luo. His face was hideous and terrifying. Shut up! Huangfu Jintian berated angrily. Looks like the punishment I gave you isn't enough. You still don't understand etiquette, right? Grandfather. Huangfu Fengyan was angered to the point of tears. Before he could finish. She was forcefully pulled back by Huangfu Qifei. Huangfu Qifei shook his head at her, then said gently, Grandpa, it's getting late. Let's return to the heaven realm first. Huangfu Jintian grunted coldly and didn't even want to take another glance at Huangfu Fengyan. He gave Pei Sheng a few instructions. Huangfu Jintian led the three of them away from Treasure Gathering Hall. Before leaving, Yi Qing Luo noticed that Huangfu Qifei's indistinct vision fell onto her. That gaze made Yi Qing Luo feel uncomfortable. In the Huangfu trio, she couldn't see through him at all. It was this Huangfu third young master, Huangfu Qifei, compared to young master Huangfu Dongyu. This third young master was the truly difficult person to deal with. Moreover, it could be seen, although Huangfu Dongyu was the eldest young master, he still followed Huangfu Qifei's opinion. Earlier, Huangfu Qifei's meaningful gaze, what did it mean? Why, after Zhu Wu Exan left, you can't bear to let those few trashes from the Huangfu family leave? Above her head, a man's deep voice floated down. With a smile yet not a smile tone, the sense of danger was extremely thick. All right, a jealous man couldn't be offended. Chapter 39-33. Glancing at the group of people around, it was obvious that they were waiting for a good show. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled. Suddenly, she stretched out her arms and hooked onto Mo Xian's neck, putting all her body weight on the man. She raised her head and looked at Mo Xian with a smile. The Overlord, are you so unconfident in your own charm? Saying that, her slender fingers had already clasped the man's chin. The smile on the corner of her mouth was like a rogue who teased a good family man. She tilted her head and her voice became gentler. At present, the Overlord's face is my favorite face, and it is also this face that makes me captivated. So captivated that I can't see anyone else. She sighed helplessly and said, Tell me I have you a little devil. Who else can I not bear to part with? Uft. The crowd who were watching the show immediately burst out laughing. One by one they gave a thumbs up, so impressed that they simply couldn't say a word. Yi Qing Luo ignored that group of people, hooked onto Mo Xian's neck and kept swaying her body. Little beauty, do you think? What I said is reasonable. Mo Xian's eyes became darker and darker. His burning gaze seemed to want to swallow Yi Qing Luo. Immediately, under Yi Qing Luo's gaze, his thin lips curled up, so handsome that it made one's heart skip a beat. In that case, you only fancy my face? The man's voice sounded very deep. Yi Qing Luo released his chin and stuffed herself into the man's arms, the corners of her lips curled up. How can you say it in such a superficial way? You originally belonged to me. Mo Xian's brows rose, but he didn't say another word. Yi Qing Luo hugged his waist again. Looks like it's time for you to prove your charm. She moved closer to his ear and whispered these words. It was completely hinting at something. Dmo Xian heard that, his eyes deepened a few notches. He even used that meaningful, seductive peach blossom eyes to stare deeply at her for a while. Yi Qing Luo's legs went soft from that gaze. Somehow she felt as if she had consciously jumped into the pit that the man had dug. However, the jealous man was finally appeased. The way the two of them treated the onlookers like air had deeply provoked the crowd. Zhou Mo was the first to flip the table and leave with Kitty Li in his arms. Right at this moment, a slender figure walked over from outside the treasure-gathering hall. "Little Qingguo, I'm telling you, don't ever go in. Go in and be abused." When Zhou Mo saw the person coming, he immediately complained bitterly. Jun Qingguo glanced at Zhou Mo indifferently. She ignored him and walked straight into the inner courtyard. The minute Yi Qing Luo saw Jun Qingguo, she happily went forward to welcome her. His gaze fell on her hand. Jun Qingguo was holding a letter. "Letter? Your letter." Jun Qingguo handed the letter to her. "Mine." Yi Qing Luo was puzzled. Who had specially asked Jun Qingguo to send her a letter? "Your old acquaintance." Jun Qingguo glanced at the letter. Her meaning was, "Look at it yourself. You'll know once you read it." Yi Qing Luo opened the letter suspiciously. When she saw the name on the letter, her pupils suddenly shrank. Miao Ji. It was a letter from Miao Ji. The Miao tribe's holy maiden from the Miao Gu clan was Miao Yi's aunt. At that time, Miao Ji had ascended to the Earth Realm. Miao Yi had inherited the Miao tribe's holy maiden's position. She had not expected that Miao Ji would actually write her a letter. After reading the contents of the letter, she put the letter down. Mo Yuing immediately asked, "What did she say?" Yi Qing Luo was stunned. Mo Yuing had always been someone who didn't put anything to heart. But now she took the initiative to ask about Miao Ji. Chapter 39-34. Jean, did something happen to him? Yi Qing Luo's pupils suddenly constricted. The gu poison in Long Yunjan's body was still lingering in his body. At that time, he specially sent Miao Yi to the West Continent to help Long Yunjan resolve the gu. However, Miao Yi could only temporarily suppress the gu poison in Long Yunjan's body. Old Man Tsang had even mentioned before, the gu poison in Long Yunjan's body was not a gu that could be cultivated in the Nirvana realm. This kind of gu worm could only be nurtured by someone with extraordinary strength. To completely cure the gu, he could only go to the upper realm and find someone who understood the art of witchcraft to cure Long Yunjan. Miao Ji had delivered the letter. It was regarding the poison in Long Yunjan's body and the problem of meeting her tomorrow. However, after knowing that the letter was written by Miao Ji, Mo Yuing actually took the initiative to ask a question. Yi Qing Luo's first reaction was to think of Long Yunjan. Mo Yuing blinked her empty eyes and shook her head stiffly. No. Yi Qing Luo stared intently at Mo Yuing. That expressionless, soulless face was devoid of any other emotions. After a while, Yi Qing Luo's expression loosened up. "Let's go see Miao Ji together tomorrow." Mo Yuing wasn't someone who would lie. She said she was fine, at least before she came to the Earth domain. Long Yunjan's poison did not flare up again. Mo Yuing nodded vigorously. Yi Qing Luo had just kept the letter. He wanted to hug Jun Qingguo and thank her. The arms did not have time to open. Her feet suddenly left the ground. Her whole body fell into a broad embrace. Above her head, a man's low and husky voice floated down. Yet there was a hint of coldness in it. "Lil Luo just woke up not too long ago. She still needs more rest. I'll take her away first." Everyone widened their eyes, wanting to stop him. What did he mean by needing more rest? Obviously, Yi Qing Luo had just woken up not long ago. I didn't talk to them for long, okay? However, no one dared to say such words. He could only watch helplessly as Dmo Xian brought Yi Qing Luo away in an extremely overbearing manner. Yi Qing Luo wrapped her arms around Dmo Xian's neck and felt the cool breeze brushing past her cheeks. But soon, she was tightly wrapped in the man's arms. Warmth engulfed her. Yi Qing Luo realized something. Her little head curled up in his arms. As soon as he arrived, he entered his room. Yi Qing Luo's back fell onto the soft bedding. The man's warm air pressure hit her face. Yi Qing Luo hurriedly stretched out her hand and blocked Dmo Xian's chest. As soon as he raised his head, he was met with a pair of obsidian eyes that were deep and filled with emotion. Her heart skipped a beat. Her cheeks were also flushed red. "Didn't you say that I just woke up and need more rest? What are you doing?" Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. Her fingers caressed the man's brows and gently traced. Dmo Xian narrowed his eyes as he glanced at the fingers that were moving around on his face. His lips curled up devilishly. "You're still more adorable when you're lying down." Yi Qing Luo. These words, why did it sound so horrifying? Don't make it sound like, "I'm a necrophiliac, okay?" There was something wrong with this scene. Dmo Xian gave a low chuckle, but there wasn't any mirth in his eyes. "You who is lying down, there's only me by your side." His voice was very deep. It was so deep that it made one's heart felt constricted. Yi Qing Luo was just about to say something. Chapter 39-35. I don't want to appear so petty. He buried his head in between her neck as his voice was very low and a little fuzzy, but she could hear the gloominess in his tone. "Lil Luo, do you feel that my possessiveness is very scary?" His voice turned deeper and deeper. "I obviously know that there's nothing going on between you and him, but seeing the way he looks at you, the attitude he has towards you, I just want to hold you in my arms. Just want you to belong to me alone." The man's voice, word by word, was clearly transmitted into Yi Qing Luo's ears. Yi Qing Luo's pupils suddenly constricted as her eyelashes started to tremble. She stretched out her hands and hooked onto Dmo Xian's neck, hugging him back. I know how you feel." She hugged the man tightly as her eyes turned slightly red. "A long time ago I said, I don't hate your possessiveness. You want to own me, because you care about me, That's why you want me to belong to you alone." How would she not know? Her Xian had taken care of her feelings. How much pain had he suffered? How many times had she relied on Xian's pampering to do things that made Xian worried? Yi Qing Luo cupped his face as a light kiss fell on his face. "This kind of possessiveness, I don't find it scary at all because I feel the same." Finally, her kiss fell on Dmo Xian's lips. Like a dragonfly touching the water, it moved away. Her hands cupped his face, pressing her forehead against his. "Xian, our feelings are the same." Because they loved each other, so they cared, so they wanted to own him. Yi Qing Luo buried her head in his chest again as she whispered softly, telling Dmo Xian everything that she had said to Chu Wu Xen earlier. Finally, she raised her little head, her chin resting on his chest as she gazed at his clean chin, say, "What did he mean by be careful of the people around you?" To sow discord, his hand brushed Yi Qing Luo's fine hair as Dmo Xian answered lazily. Yi Qing Luo used her head to knock him. "We're talking about serious matters. Be more serious." Dmo Xian's voice became even fainter, with a trace of indifference. "I'm very serious." Although that was the case, but the man's hand had already landed on her waist. His body turned slightly cold. Her robe was scattered on the side of the bed. Yi Qing Luo was so angry that she laughed. Her little hand stopped the man. "What kind of decency is this?" Loosening his robe halfway, Dmo Xian propped himself up, and his good-looking face was imprinted right in front of her eyes. "Why don't you tell me? How did I become indecent?" Yi Qing Luo. Why don't you tell me what you're doing now is considered decent? Could he move away from her and say those words with a straight face? Do you have any sense of shame? Lying through your teeth, doesn't your conscience hurt? DMO, Xian expressed. For the woman I love, what is face? What's the use of it? If he came, could he sleep with little Luo? To be able to sleep with Lil Luo, one's conscience would only feel better. Yi Qing Luo. She only wanted to understand from DMO Xian's mouth what the people around Zhu Wu Xian meant by that. Couldn't they discuss the problem first before doing anything else? No matter how Yi Qing Luo's inner heart rejected or how her actions resisted. Finally, when the man's kiss landed. Chapter 39-36. By the time Yi Qing Luo woke up, it was already the next morning. The man beside her had long disappeared. Yi Qing Luo climbed up from the bed. Her entire body was sore and limp, almost unable to straighten her back. She simply didn't dare to recall the scene of being indecent treated by the man yesterday. That scene was too terrifying. Just recalling it made her legs wobbly. At this moment, she only wanted to use 2 words to describe her feelings. Beast. Wasn't he a beast? The man last night was like a beast who had been trapped for a long time, using all kinds of ways to torment her. He even forced her to stay awake. To put it nicely, she had said it herself. Since she had flirted with someone, she should be responsible, so she had to set an example. After that, he was unbridled, tormenting her. After that, he said that he was magnanimous to let her and Chu Wu Xian chat alone, so he must be rewarded. Hence, tormenting again. After that, there was no more after that. She opened her eyes. Her entire body was about to fall apart. Her 4 limbs were almost not her own. Yi Qing Luo cried out and pounced onto the blanket, not wanting to move at all. But time waited for no one. She still had to attend Miao Ji's appointment today. After struggling for some time, Yi Qing Luo scolded DMO Xian in her heart as she got up from the bed. When she stepped on the ground, Yi Qing Luo felt as though she was stepping on cotton, soft and fluffy. But, although her body was sore, she felt refreshed, and that place was cool without the pain she had imagined. At least that man still had some conscience. He knew that after tormenting her, he would serve her well. Yi Qing Luo snorted. The grievance in her heart had lessened by quite a bit. She hung DMO Xian, especially on the wooden frame with difficulty, and let her put on the red robe neatly and washed up. She was finally able to walk normally and do other actions. Yi Qing Luo stretched her waist and stretched her muscles before walking out of the room. When she walked out of the courtyard, Yi Qing Luo saw Mo Yuing and Qiao Yinyan sitting opposite each other on the stone bench. Old Lai was lying sloppily on the rockery with a blade of grass in his mouth. Gui Wu, Zhou Mo and Kitty Li were nowhere to be seen. When Yi Qing Luo saw the 2 of them sitting opposite each other, she was rather astonished. He was very curious. The 2 of them could actually sit face to face peacefully, and the atmosphere wasn't that tense. Not easy at all. Mo Yuing sensed Yi Qing Luo's gaze and immediately stood up, walking towards Yi Qing Luo. Her pink body was petite and cute. When he pounced into Yi Qing Luo's arms, Yi Qing Luo withdrew her arms and gave him a full hug. During this period of time, Yi Qing Luo felt a gaze which was as sharp as a blade in front of her. She frowned and looked over. She met Qiao Yinyan's gaze. Qiao Yinyan didn't avoid her gaze. He just stared at her, the hand that was holding Mo Yuying's hand. TSK, that gaze was a little too much. Before Mo Yuying appeared, Qiao Yinyan was gentle and polite to her. Many people even misunderstood that he liked her. Now Mo Yuying had appeared. She, the stepping stone, was kicked to the side. Now that she was hugging Mo Yuying, she was being hated by him? Man. Yi Qing Luo retracted her gaze and hugged Mo Yuying even more fiercely. Let's go, Shadow, let's go see Miao Ji. Ing nodded her head vigorously. Waiting here early in the morning was to wait for Yi Qing Luo to meet Miao Ji together. The goo poison in Long Yun Zhan's body was not cured. Chapter 39-37. Yi Qing Luo hugged Mo Yuing as she walked towards the entrance of the courtyard. Qiao Yinyan immediately stood up and followed behind. Yi Qing Luo halted her footsteps as she turned her head sideways and looked at Qiao Yinyan as her slender brows rose slightly. "You intend to keep following us?" "Amen," Qiao Yinyan replied straightforwardly. His deep black eyes stared at Mo Yuing without blinking. His silver hair contrasted with his black eyes, making his pupils look even darker. "So you're saying you're already certain that she is the person you're looking for?" Yi Qing Luo turned around and met his gaze. Those deep eyes seemed to be able to see through everything about him. His tone was unprecedentedly serious. To Yi Qing Luo, everyone in Devil Class were her brothers who had gone through life and death together, even if Mo Yuing was older than her. But in her heart, she had always treated Mo Yuing as her own sister to love. If Qiao Yinyan was sincere in wanting to resolve the misunderstanding with Mo Yuing and get together again, Yi Qing Luo was naturally willing. The days they had spent together, Yi Qing Luo was certain that Qiao Yinyan's character was indeed not bad. Moreover, his feelings towards Mo Yuing were very sincere, but the prerequisite was that he could really resolve the misunderstanding between him and Mo Yuing, and not with other cliché motives. Qiao Yinyan's gaze didn't even blink, but his gaze became much gentler. Right. One word, clean and crisp, which also explained his attitude. Yi Qing Luo raised her brows as she hugged Mo Yuing and turned around as she walked out of the courtyard's main entrance. Her voice was slightly indifferent and calm, but her tone was filled with unquestionable might. "Then remember what you said today." Qiao Yinyan didn't reply as he followed behind her slowly. Old Lai leapt down from the rockery as he pounced over. "There's such a lively place. How can you not bring me along?" Yi Qing Luo rolled her eyes at the old man who came up to her after wandering for so long. "You're not intending to return to Hell Palace?" She realized. Why was there always a bunch of old urchins surrounding her? After Guiyu left, a god thief came. Now there was another old Lai. Previously, they were still in a life and death situation with Hell Palace. Now Hell Palace had become her acting cool backing. This world was really too complicated. Yi Qing Luo was unable to keep up with this pace. "Why would I want to go back to the underworld palace? It's so boring. There's so many interesting things to do with you. I don't want to go back." Lai shook his head decisively. He looked as if he would risk his life to follow her. "You can follow me, but don't create any trouble." Yi Qing Luo couldn't be bothered to persuade old Lai. With old Lai following him, many things would indeed be more convenient. At the very least, those who wanted to curry favor with him. They were afraid of old Lai, so they did not dare to rush forward and surround her. In a relatively remote inn, Yi Qing Luo's group had just arrived when a waiter went up to welcome them, leading them to the most corner of the private room. Yi Qing Luo had just walked in when she saw Miao Ji standing by the window, deep in thought. Miao Ji, who had not been seen for a long time, was no longer wearing the complicated and intricate clothing she wore when she was in the Miao tribe. Instead, she was wearing a long green robe. Her black hair was tied up with a wooden hairpin. It made her look as gentle as water. Even the dignified and noble aura she exuded when she was at the Miaogu clan had become extremely gentle. Yi Qing Luo didn't recognize the person in front of her for a moment. It was Miao Ji who heard the door opening as she regained her senses from her deep thoughts. She gave a gentle smile towards Yi Qing Luo. "Qing Luo, long time no see." Chapter 39-38. Miao Ji smiled gently. "Why? Didn't you come specially for my appointment? Why are you so surprised to see me?" Yi Qing Luo pulled out a chair and sat down as she sized Miao Ji up. I am indeed surprised. I haven't seen you for such a long time, and you seem to have changed into another person. I thought I had recognized the wrong person. People have no choice but to wear a mask under certain circumstances. Miao Ji picked up the teapot and poured a cup of tea for everyone. My task is completed, so I can naturally remove the mask. Previously, Miao Ji, as an outsider, was taken over by the previous Miao tribe's holy maiden and became the Miao tribe's holy maiden. Only she knew how much pressure she had to bear. So, she had no choice but to toughen herself up. Dignified, indestructible. Only by making herself stronger. Only by making herself stronger could she deter those who had ill intentions. Now, she had already retreated unscathed to the heaven realm and was living a carefree life. Naturally, there was no need to put on that mask. The few behind her all sat down. Mo Ewing couldn't wait to ask, Aunt Miao, you said you already have a way to cure class monitor's goo, right? Her speech was much faster than usual, even though her tone was still as calm as before. But she could feel the fear and uneasiness in her heart. Hearing this voice, Miao Ji frowned slightly as she looked at Mo Ewing. When she met Mo Ewing's eyes, her pupils suddenly shrank. Even his face had turned a few shades paler. What's the matter? Yiqing Luo noticed the change in Miao Ji's expression. Miao Ji stretched out her hand and held Mo Ewing's wrist. Mo Ewing was stunned as she blinked her eyes, seemingly puzzled. But Qiao Yinyan, who was by her side, moved his palm and quickly slapped down towards Miao Ji's hand. Miao Ji held Mo Ying's hand and dodged to the side. That palm landed on the table. The teacups collided and the tea spilled out. Qiao Yinyan's eyes sunk as he raised his palm to stop Miao Ji. Yiqing Luo couldn't stand it anymore as her fingertips moved and the glower flame fan opened up and slid into Qiao Yinyan's palm. Qiao Yinyan, if you continue to make trouble, I will ask my shadow to get you out. Qiao Yinyan's hand froze as he frowned and looked at Yiqing Luo. At this time, Mo Ewing cooperatively looked up at him and nodded. Yes, get out. Qiao Yinyan was speechless. Qiao Yinyan fell silent, but his line of sight was fixed on Miao Ji's hand that was holding Mo Ying's. He was not familiar with Miao Ji. However, when she saw Miao Ji suddenly grabbing onto Mo Ewing, her actions were quick and she wanted to protect Mo Ewing. However, Miao Ji only pressed on Mo Ying's pulse. After a few breaths, her brows furrowed even tighter. How long has your condition been like this? What? Mo Ewing raised her head. Her beautiful face was expressionless. Yiqing Luo understood the meaning behind her words as her expression sunk. You're asking her kind. Like a soulless state? Yes, Miao Ji said. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips slightly. Ever since I knew her, she has always been like this. But this young Master Qiao was rumored to be acquainted with the shadow. The shadow in the past was not like this. Pausing slightly, Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly widened. What you mean is, Shadow was poisoned by a venomous worm? She became like this because of the goo worm. Yiqing Luo's words came out. Qiao Yinyan and Mo Ewing both looked at her. Then they looked at Miao Ji in unison. Poisoned by a venomous worm. Chapter 39:39. Miao Ji, who was being stared at by several pairs of eyes, quickly let go of Mo Ying's wrist and shook her head. Her condition doesn't seem like she was poisoned. Yiqing Luo heaved a sigh of relief. You made the atmosphere so serious if it's not. But before she could catch her breath, Miao Ji changed the topic again. The expression on her face was serious and serious. Her condition may be more troublesome than being poisoned. Troublesome? What do you mean? Do you know why she became like this? Qiao Yinyan was the most agitated as he stood up and stared at Miao Ji. Yiqing Luo glanced at Qiao Yinyan and raised her hand to block in front of him. He lowered his eyes and looked at Yiqing Luo's wrist. His cold expression became even colder. Even his gaze towards Yi Qingluo had turned colder by a few notches. But Yi Qingluo's hand still didn't move. Both sides fought for a moment. Qiao Yinyan gritted his teeth and clenched his fists as he sat down. But the pressure around him was so low that the surrounding air was slightly condensed. Aunt Miao, you don't have to care about him. Yi Qingluo held Mo Yuying's hand and looked at Miaoji seriously. You said the shadow is more troublesome than being poisoned. What's going on? If she is poisoned, I can still help and find those seniors to research. But her condition doesn't seem to be poisoned, but more like being possessed. Possessed. Yi Qingluo was stunned. Did she hear it wrongly? Possessed? Her first reaction was being possessed by a ghost. But this was obviously impossible. It wasn't that there were no ghosts in this strange world. To be more precise, the so-called ghosts were all spiritual bodies. For example, the old man Tsang in her azure dew bracelet was also considered a type of ghost. As for profound practitioners like them, they were able to interact with spirits, so how could they be bewitched? I'm not talking about being harassed by other spiritual bodies or anything else. Miao Ji stared at Mo Yuying for a while. I'm not too sure. But her condition seems like she has lost her soul. 3 souls and 6 spirits? If a person lost their soul, wouldn't they be a corpse? Although Mo Yuying looked like a puppet without a soul. There's no soul light in her eyes, and even her pulse is so weak that it's hard to detect. This was also the first time Miao Ji had encountered such a situation. My goo-worm cannot sense her soul power. Yi Qingluo pursed her lips tightly as she glanced sideways at the girl beside her. He couldn't believe it. This girl who would call her Qingluo, who would fight for her favor, and even requested for kisses and hugs. It would be a puppet without a soul. Then, is there any way to retrieve her soul? Qiao Yinyan, who was ordered to sit by the side by Yi Qingluo, opened his mouth hoarsely. His tone was filled with suppressed pain. Ever since he knew that Mo Yuying's memory was a mess and she had completely forgotten about him, Qiao Yinyan's heart had always been in a mess. Now he finally got his answer. Mo Yuying didn't forget about him. Instead, he had lost his soul and all his memories. As long as he could find Mo Yuying's soul, Mo Yuying would definitely remember him. Miao Ji sighed. This, I'm not sure. Yi Qingluo swallowed the words that were in her mouth. She was clear that Miao Ji only specialized in goo poison. The reason why she could tell that Mo Yuying had lost her soul. Chapter 3940. Mo Yuying's soul. Perhaps only by going to the Godless Island would he be able to get the answer. Yi Qingluo had an intuition. Mo Yuying becoming like this was definitely related to Godless Island. There was definitely something wrong with the so-called island owner of Godless Island. TSK, a way to search for souls. Old Lai, who had been leaning on the chair and playing with the teacup in boredom, suddenly spoke. He put down the teacup and looked at Yi Qingluo smilingly. I do. He smiled. The frightening scar on his face was even more shocking. The flesh that was sent flying was still moving. Yi Qingluo's expression didn't change at all. Speak. Old Lai leaned over and looked as if he was presenting a treasure. There's nothing our underworld palace can't do. I can tell you the method to search for souls. However, this information can be considered as the underworld palace repaying the debt they owed you. As he spoke, he rubbed his hands together. How is it? Then let's see if your idea is reliable or not. Yi Qingluo rubbed her chin. Lao Lai proudly raised his chin and said, How can my method be unreliable? How can someone from my hell sect be unreliable? As he spoke, he lowered his voice again. Finding a soul can actually be said to be difficult. Have you heard of the ocean water divine armament? Vast water divine weapon? Yi Qingluo's brows twitched. Before he could say anything, Qiao Yinyan asked anxiously, You're talking about the Azure Water Divine artifact that was sealed by the Divine Emperor before he passed away? It's rumored that there are 5 vast Water Divine weapons. Old Lai nodded. It's that vast Water Divine weapon. As long as he gathered all 5 divine artifacts, he would be able to call the wind and summon the rain, summoning the gods and ghosts, not to mention finding the 3 souls and 7 spirits. But according to the rumors of my Qiao family's ancestors, if we gather all 5 vast Water Divine artifacts and offer the blood of the descendant of the Divine Emperor as a sacrifice to the heavens, we can open the seal to the Divine Emperor's tomb. Qiao Yinyan said doubtfully, That's right. That's why I said that he could even undo the seal on the tomb of the God Emperor. Isn't it a piece of cake to help that girl find her soul? Lao Lai said with a very reasonable look. Qiao Yinyan's frown deepened. Mo Ying raised her head. Her expressionless face did not have the slightest fluctuation of emotions. The pair of empty and soulless eyes blinked. Then he said, It's too dangerous to gather all 5 Azure Water Divine weapons. If someone really opens the tomb of the God Emperor, the consequences will be unthinkable. She paused for a moment and held Yi Qing Luo's hand. I'm all right. I'm already used to it. I don't remember the people in the past, but to be able to remember you, to remember everyone in Devil Class, that's enough. Yi Qing Luo met with Mo Ying's empty eyes. Hearing her saying that everything was for their sake, she couldn't help but hugged her into her arms. She was just about to speak. His voice was cut off again. Qiao Yinyan's voice was anxious, uneasy, and fearful. This won't do, that won't do. What should he do? In the past, she was clearly so lively and beautiful. Now, is it really fair for her? Calm down. Miao Ji comforted. The vast Water Divine relic was a divine relic used by the Divine Sovereign when he was still alive. Even if we wanted to find a divine relic, it wouldn't be that easy. What's more, even if we found the divine relic, other than the Overlord, no one else is able to use the power of the divine relic. Qiao Yinyan's trembling body slowly stabilized. His eyes stared deadly at Mo Ying. The expression on his face was filled with pain. Chapter 3941. Everyone finally quietened down and fixed their eyes on her. Yi Qing Luo touched Mo Ying's head, looked at her, and asked seriously, You only need to answer me, do? Want to become a normal person? Mo Ying's fingers that were intertwined with hers suddenly tightened. Her eyelashes fluttered. This reaction had already indicated her answer. Yi Qing Luo brushed the hair on her forehead and gently stroked it. In front of me, there's no need to suppress your own thoughts. Mo Ying's lifeless eyes faintly flashed a glimmer of light. After some time, she finally nodded her head under Yi Qing Luo's gaze. She thought, how could he not think about it? Who would be willing to be a puppet without feelings and emotions? She knew her own situation very well. For a person like her, other than everyone in Devil Class, no one would treat her as a real person. She would also hope for warmth. She wanted to be like a normal person, to have her own emotions and expressions. But the price of returning to normal was too great. She was afraid. Just thinking about it is enough. Yi Qing Luo stopped Mo Ying's thoughts as her lips curled up slightly. Leave the matter regarding the Azure Water God relic to me. Qing Luo. Mo Ying's lips moved, wanting to say something but hesitating. Yi Qing Luo smiled, lowered her head, and leaned close to her ear. Don't feel guilty. It's not only because of you. My original intention was to gather all the Tsang Shui artifacts. Mo Ying still wanted to say something. Yi Qing Luo had already patted her head as she widened the distance between them. To prevent Mo Ying from blaming herself for the Tsang Shui artifact again, Yi Qing Luo changed the topic. Aunt Miao, let's not talk about this matter for now. Yesterday you wrote in the letter that you already have a way to cure Zhan's goo. Is that true? Long Yun Zhan was mentioned. Mo Ying's attention was indeed diverted. Miao Jiwei was stunned for a moment before remembering her purpose of coming here today. To be honest, I'm not too sure myself. Yi Qing Luo wasn't disappointed. The poison that was placed on Long Yunjan's body was a poison from the upper realm. Naturally, it wasn't that easy to solve. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, it was better than having no hope at all. So, that means that you already know just what is the goo poison in Zhan's body? She asked. Miao Ji nodded with a serious expression. Based on what Yi told me, the goo poison in Sir Long's body should be the most powerful goo poison in the heaven realm, the heart-devouring goo. Witchcraft family? The best of witchcraft? Heart-devouring insect. Listening to these heavy blows falling one after another, Yi Qing Luo was extremely shocked. She had heard about this witchcraft family from Old Man Song. This witchcraft, compared to the Miaogu clan, it was of an unknown number of times higher level. They could be considered as the largest venomous insect clan in the upper realm. He was also in existence that many large forces were unwilling to provoke. Not wanting to provoke them and not wanting to provoke the Underworld Palace were two completely different concepts. The people from the Underworld Palace were a bunch of lunatics. They were clearly fighting head-on and causing a ruckus. If they provoked the Miao Gu aristocrat clan, he might just die for no reason. He didn't even know how he died. It was very strange. Heart-devouring goo. That is an extremely precious kind of goo. It can be said that in the entire witchcraft family, there are less than 10 of them. Those are all peerless grade goo worms which have been nurtured for 100 years. When Miao Ji said this, her tone was filled with admiration. Chapter 3942. Listening to Miao Ji's explanation, Yi Qing Luo was shocked. 100 years of nurturing witchcraft's best, peerless worm, was planted on Long Yunjan, witchcraft aristocratic family. Or who had such deep hatred towards Long Yunjan, no matter if it was the witchcraft aristocratic family or someone else. The person who planted the worm on Long Yunjan was absolutely not a small character. The entire witchcraft aristocratic family had less than 10 heart-devouring worms, and it was planted on a young man with amnesia. Wait, amnesia. Yi Qing Luo's pupils contracted. Long Yunjan's amnesia. Could it be related to this heart-devouring worm? Human Dragon Clan. Long Yunjan and the witchcraft aristocratic family. Looked like it involved a lot of people. Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as a glint flashed past her eyes. Qing Luo, I specially asked you out today to tell you that this heart-devouring worm has no cure. Miao Ji looked at Yi Qing Luo's expression and couldn't bear it, but she had to make things clear. Yi Qing Luo was stunned as she suddenly raised her head. Didn't you say? You have a way. The only way I can think of is. Miao Ji paused, took a deep breath, and said word by word, while the heart-devouring worm hasn't acted up, kill the person who is poisoned. Impossible. Yi Qing Luo rejected without thinking. Kill Long Yunjan? How could that be possible? If Long Yunjan was really poisoned and wanted to kill him to free him. Earlier, when Long Yunjan's poison acted up and hurt Yan Xiao Yi, she would have already taken action. Long Yunjan was her brother, her companion. No matter what, she would never give up on anyone. Other than this, there's no other way. Miao Ji sighed. I know, to you this is a very painful thing, but actually he is feeling more pain than you. Miao Ji looked at the young lady whose petite body started to tremble as her voice became gentler. I know how you feel. If it wasn't for the fact that I can't think of any other way, I would definitely not suggest this to you. She stretched out her hand and placed it on the young lady's clenched fist. The terror of the heart-devouring parasite lies in its ability to slowly devour a person's heart, soul, consciousness, and everything that belongs to the victim. In the end, not even bones will be left of the victim. Most importantly, the heart-devouring parasite will also control the consciousness of the victim, making the victim do something that they will regret for the rest of their life while they are awake. She tightened her grip and said, "When the parasite took effect, the pain and torment your brother suffered was worse than death." When he heard the name of this goo worm, Yi Ching Luo could roughly guess the insidiousness of this goo worm. He just didn't expect it to be so insidious. Ching Luo. Mo Yuying's hand grabbed onto Yi Ching Luo's arm as her little body trembled in shock. She opened her empty eyes as she stared at Yi Ching Luo without blinking, even if there were no emotions. Yi Ching Luo could sense the fear and helplessness in Mo Yuying's heart. Yi Ching Luo tried her best to calm herself down as she raised her hand and rubbed her furry little head. Since we know that Zhan is afflicted with a heart-devouring parasite, then we will definitely be able to find a way to cure Zhan. Mo Yuying's stiff face started to show some signs of change. Then she nodded her head vigorously. Both her hands grabbed tightly onto Yi Ching Luo's arm. Sigh. Miao Ji sighed helplessly. I knew you would say that. Chapter 3943. Miao Ji let go of her hand. I will continue to think of a way. You should consider it well. Regarding Yi Ching Luo's choice, when Miao Ji mentioned it, she had already thought of this outcome. But even if she knew, she still had to say out this cruel method because she was responsible for Yi Ching Luo. But the final decision was still up to them. She found out that Mo Yuying had lost her soul. She found out about the terror of the heart-devouring parasite and incurable parasite. Yi Ching Luo's mood was extremely heavy. Miao Ji let out a long sigh and gave her a few more reminders before she left. She specially handed Mo Yuying a letter for her to pass to Miao Yi. After Miao Ji left, the few people in the private room had different emotions. Yi Ching Luo and Mo Yuying's minds were filled with Long Yunzhan and the heart-devouring parasite. As for Qiao Yinyan, his mind was filled with searching for Mo Yuying's lost soul and awakening her memory. His expression was complicated as he stared at Mo Yuying in pain. Only old Lai didn't seem to feel the gloomy atmosphere at all. After Miao Ji left, he went up to Yi Ching Luo and his eyes lit up. Madam D, you said I will pass the Azure Water Divine Relic to you. Does that mean you intend to collect all 5 pieces of Azure Water Divine Relic? Saying that, he gave a sneaky smile. If I remember correctly, Madam D seems to have the Azure Water Divine Relic on you. When you collect all the Azure Water Divine Relic, can you bring me along? Let me have a look at the legendary Azure Water Divine Relic. Old Lai rubbed his hands as he spoke. That terrifying scar on his face was trembling so much that the red flesh was flying. The more he smiled, the more ferocious he looked. Yi Ching Luo didn't want to bother about him. Old Lai went nearer instead. His nagging was like a fly buzzing around her ear. Qiao Yinyan couldn't take it anymore as he pressed his palm on Old Lai's head. Old Lai fell onto the ground. He fell flat on his face. Can't you see that we are in trouble? Qiao Yinyan was irritated and his expression was dark. Old Lai rubbed his face as he got up from the ground. Didn't I give you an idea? Qiao Yinyan didn't even look at Lao Lai. He suddenly reached out and grabbed Mo Yuying's wrist. You, come out with me for a while. Mo Yuying didn't have time to react. Qiao Yinyan had already dragged her to the door. The room door closed, and there was only Yi Ching Luo and Old Lai left in the room. Lao Lai obviously wanted to be mischievous again, but seeing Yi Ching Luo's gloomy expression, he rubbed his sore butt. Finally, he snorted loudly to show that he was angry. Then he jumped down from the window and flew away. Yi Ching Luo, forget it. When Old Lai knows that no one is coaxing him, he will come back obediently. What are you doing? Mo Yuying's arm was in pain from his grip, but she didn't struggle. It was only when they reached a corner of the corridor that Qiao Yinyan stopped in his tracks. With one hand, he pulled the girl into his embrace. What's your relationship with that man called Zhan? He could tell. No matter if it was Yi Ching Luo or Mo Yuing. They both cared about that man. Yi Qing Luo obviously treated him as a brother. But Mo Yuing, the attention she paid to that man was obviously different. So much that she didn't even care about the fact that she didn't have 3 souls and 7 spirits. She only wanted to know how to cure that man's goo. She even frowned because of that man. Qiao Yinyan had been suppressing his emotions. Chapter 3944. She was obviously so cold towards him. Even when she spoke, she would only reply after a long time, as though she didn't care about him at all. The reason why she cared about him was because he was Yi Qing Luo's friend. This feeling had been accumulating in the depths of Qiao Yinyan's heart. This time, after he felt that Mo Yuing had a different attitude towards another man, he completely exploded. Qiao Yinyan held onto her hand as he stared deadly at her. He wanted to transmit his inner feelings to her, but Mo Yuing was expressionless. There was no trace of emotion in her empty eyes. She didn't reply. Their eyes met. After some time, Qiao Yinyan felt a sense of defeat. He shut his eyes tightly and slowly released the hand which was holding Mo Yuing's hand. His shoulders drooped down powerlessly. His back was bent and he looked extremely dejected. He slowly took a few steps back and gazed deeply at Mo Yuing. Then he slowly turned around. His feet staggered and swayed. It was as if something heavy had completely crushed him. Mo Yuing's empty eyes suddenly blinked. She stared at Qiao Yinyan's back view. His extremely black eyes flashed with a hint of dark and gloomy light. She lifted up the wrist, which was held by Qiao Yinyan. She lowered her eyes and stared at the place which was held by Qiao Yinyan. Then she slowly pressed her hand on her chest. Just now, when Qiao Yinyan let go of her hand, that place on her chest seemed to hurt a little. That prickling feeling disappeared in a flash. Was it painful? Does she also have the feeling of pain? Mo Yuing looked at the place where her palm was pressed and raised her head stiffly, looking at the man's staggering tall figure. Just now, the moment when he turned around to leave, her body actually had a reflexive desire to keep him. This was a strange and wonderful feeling. She had never felt this way before. Bam! Suddenly, there was a sound of a heavy object colliding in front. Mo Yuing looked over. In front, that man who couldn't even walk steadily crashed into the stone wall at the corner. He staggered and fell to the ground. As for him, he just sat on the ground. He had no intention of getting up at all. Mo Yuing subconsciously walked towards that person and squatted beside him. You can't move? Why are you sitting on the ground? Hearing this emotionless, machine-like voice, Luo Bingyun's heart skipped a beat. The man with the dog on his back suddenly turned his head and looked at her happily. Are you concerned about me? He grabbed her wrists with both hands. Her face was reflected in his eyes. Mo Yuing looked at her hands that were being grabbed and blinked her eyes. She stared at him and said, "This is outside and you are the young master of the Qiao family. Don't let others see you being rude." Qiao Yinyan's eyes were full of smiles. With Mo Yuing's support, he stood up. His gaze had been fixed on her from the beginning to the end. It was as if he wanted to absorb everything about her into the deepest part of his heart. Mo Yuing felt a little uncomfortable under his gaze. Just as he was about to say something, her wrist suddenly tightened. Her petite body was tightly held in Qiao Yinyan's arms. Mo Yuing was a little stiff, but she didn't struggle. Chapter 3945. Mo Yuying's body stiffened and she felt very uncomfortable, but he had to admit it. Qiao Yinyan held her in his arms. She could feel the warmth from Qiao Yinyan's body. She was not disgusted. He had no intention of resisting. On the contrary, something seemed to fill her heart. Mo Yuing didn't know what this feeling was, nor could she describe it. I won't ask any more. I won't ask any questions that you don't want to answer. Qiao Yinyan tightened his grip on her, as if he was afraid that the person in front of him would disappear. That fearful and cautious look on her face. Mou Ing blinked her empty eyes again. Soon after, she slowly raised her hands and imitated the way he hugged her, hugging his back. Qiao Yinyan's body stiffened. His muscles were all tensed up. Mou Ing didn't notice the change in the man as she followed her first instinct and said word by word, "The Ajan that Qing Luo mentioned is my class monitor. He is—" Slowly, she told him about her relationship with Long Yunjian. This was probably the most she had ever spoken in her memory. However, after the explanation, Qiao Yinyan's mood had obviously improved a lot. She did not continue to dwell on the matter of how much she had said. The next day, Mou Ing then raised the matter of returning to Nirvana Realm to Yi Qing Luo. She came to the Earth domain originally to help Yi Qing Luo. Now he had finished helping her. He also obtained information about the goo worms in Long Yunjian's body. Furthermore, she had been in the Earth domain for a long time. If he didn't go back, the brothers of the World Mercenary Group were all worried to death. She still had to tell her brothers about the heart-devouring goo. Yi Qing Luo didn't stop her. After all, Mou Ing had been in the Earth realm for a very long time. However, she readily agreed. Someone immediately protested. Qiao Yinyan grabbed Mou Ying's wrist and stood up. "I don't agree." He then turned to look at Mou Ing. I won't allow you to leave the Earth domain." Mou Ing tilted her head and looked at him expressionlessly. "I want to go back." "No." Qiao Yin pursed his lips into a straight line. It wasn't easy for him to meet Mou Ing again, even if they hadn't solved the misunderstanding. But we met again. He didn't want to let her out of his sight again. He had already let go once. He didn't want to let go a second time. Mou Ing was a little unhappy and struggled to shake off his hand. "Qiao Yinyan, Inga." Qiao Yinyan refused to let go. The two of them went back and forth. Yi Qing Luo's teeth were about to ache from watching. "Qiao Yinyan, if you don't want to leave the shadow, why don't you just follow it to the Nirvana realm?" She rolled her eyes. "I—" Qiao Yinyan frowned. He was the eldest young master of the Qiao family. How could he leave so easily? "That's where Shadow has been living ever since he lost his memories of you and me. Don't you want to take a look? Don't you want to get to know Shadow's brothers and sisters? You don't want the people Shadow cares about to acknowledge your existence?" Yi Qing Luo didn't even bother to pant as she continuously sent out soul interrogations. "Qiao Yinyan." He looked at Yi Qing Luo as his handsome face trembled slightly, vaguely distorted. In the end, it turned into two words. "I will go." Yi Qing Luo smiled satisfactorily. "This is the attitude of chasing after my shadow. Then it's decided happily." The decision was made. Chapter 3946. Mou Ing kept staring at Qiao Yinyan's departing figure, not making a single sound. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she gave a teasing smile. "Why? Shadow isn't willing to let him go to Nirvana realm with you?" Hearing her voice, Mou Ying's stiff head turned over as her empty gaze met Yi Qing Luo's. Following that, she thought seriously for a moment and shook her head. "It's not that I'm not willing. That means I'm willing." Yi Qing Luo's smile became even more evil. Mou Ing blinked as her expressionless face creased. "It's his freedom to go wherever he wants to go. So even if he wants to go to Nirvana realm, it doesn't have much to do with me." This honest words made Yi Qing Luo cough dryly. Luckily, Qiao Yinyan had returned to the Qiao residence. Otherwise, hearing this, wouldn't her heart be pierced to death? Tiase looked like Qiao Yinyan's journey to chase after his wife was still far away. She had already hinted so clearly, but Mou Ing had no reaction at all. She could only silently cheer for Qiao Yinyan in her heart. "Qing Luo." Suddenly, Mou Ying's voice sounded a little hesitant as she called out Yi Qing Luo's name, waiting for Yi Qing Luo's gaze to look over. Her two little hands were pinched together. "Since yesterday, I've been wanting to ask you a question." Yi Qing Luo replied. What you want to ask is regarding the heart-devouring parasite. Should I tell Ajahn? Mo Ying nodded. Of course, he has the right to know his own situation. Yi Qing Luo had no intention to hide. Say whatever you want to say. In the end, it still depends on Ajahn's own choice. Mo Ying's adorable lips moved as though she wanted to say something, but eventually she kept her words back. I know what you're worried about. Yi Qing Luo pinched Mo Ying's face as she explained with a light smile. I also know that based on Ajahn's character, he will definitely choose to kill him now, in case the heart-devouring parasite acts up in future and hurt his brothers. If it was anyone from the World Mercenary Group, they would probably choose this way. They would rather sacrifice themselves and not bear to let any of their brothers get hurt. Yi Qing Luo's eyes lifted up slightly as her gaze looked towards the horizon, as though she could see those brothers in the World Group through the sky. There was a gentle and peaceful smile on his face. After telling him everything, you just need to tell him one thing for me. If he believes me, then he should live on. Mo Ying's eyelashes trembled and her empty eyes blinked. An indescribable emotion spread in his heart. It seemed like, ever since they arrived in the land, she could sense more and more emotions. It was as if she was becoming more and more like a person after a while. She nodded vigorously. Yes, right there the World Group had always believed in Qing Luo. Qing Luo would definitely bring them a miracle. Therefore, the class monitor would be fine. The heart-devouring parasite could definitely be removed. At noon, the group ate a meal together. Mo Ying brought Xiao Yinyan to the Nirvana realm. Before leaving, Patriarch Xiao even sent him off. He looked at Mo Ying with sparkling eyes. Although Mo Ying didn't have a soul or emotions, her body instinctively understood some of the ways of the world. Looking at the passionate Patriarch Xiao, her face stiffened as she said word by word, Patriarch Xiao, I will get Xiao Yinyan back as soon as possible. Patriarch Xiao replied, No need, no need. You can use this lad for as long as you want. Just take him. It's fine even if you don't want to bring him back. Chapter 3947. Xiao Yinyan, the onlookers. Yi Qing Luo's lips twitched. No wonder Xiao Yinyan was able to obtain Patriarch Xiao's permission so easily. Generally speaking, large forces and clans would not allow their eldest son to wander around the lower realms. To them, this was beneath their dignity. Furthermore, it was extremely risky for people from the Earth domain to head to the Nirvana realm. If the Historian of Balance and the others found out, it would be very difficult to deal with them. But Patriarch Xiao didn't even hesitate before he agreed to it. How afraid was Patriarch Xiao that his son couldn't find a wife? Previously, when he saw her, his eyes also lit up. Now that he saw Mo Ying, his eyes lit up. Could it be that, to Patriarch Xiao, it was fine as long as it was a woman? After sending Mo Ying and Xiao Yinyan off with her eyes, Yi Qing Luo turned back and hugged Kitty Li, rubbing her furry little head as she wailed. Speaking of this, we really haven't seen our brothers in the World Group for a long time. I really miss them. Yes, oh. When will they be able to reach the Earth realm together? Kitty Li hugged Yi Qing Luo back. A cold gaze was fixed on the two of them. Yi Qing Luo directly ignored it as she hugged the soft kitten, comforting Shadow's reluctant heart as she sent him off. Very soon, especially after Shadow returns, they will definitely work harder to improve themselves, then come back to the Earth boundary to look for us. Their 3-month appointment was about to arrive. I hope when we meet again. They had all undergone earth-shattering changes. The two of them were talking to each other. The owner of the cold gaze finally couldn't take it anymore. He directly grabbed Kitty Li and pulled her into his arms. With an unfriendly expression, he said, Woman, if you feel lonely, go to your sovereign. Don't touch my little wild cat. Zhou Mo grumbled and hugged Kitty Li tightly. It was as if Kitty Li was his possession. What frustrated Zhou Mo the most was, when he hugged Kitty Li, Kitty Lee's face was full of unwillingness, and she even made threatening gestures. When it reached Yi Qing Luo's arms, that adorable little kitten appearance, it even took the initiative to return the hug. The more he looked, the angrier he felt. Ha, women! She already had her own man. Yet she still came to snatch his woman. Zhou Mo's vengeful gaze made Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but roll her eyes. What was the point of glaring at his own woman if he couldn't coax her? Zhou Mo hugged the struggling Kitty Lee tightly, until Kitty Lee stopped struggling. Zhou Mo's expression eased up a little, but the expression he shot at Yi Qing Luo was still rather unfriendly. Speaking of which, where did your man go? I haven't seen him for a day. As soon as he finished speaking, the expression on his face became extremely annoying, and little Qing Guo also disappeared. TSK, a single man and a single woman, Yi Qing Luo gave him a tight slap on the face and gave a fake smile. Ha! Coax your own woman first. Look at your position in Cat's heart. It's not even comparable to me. What a waste of that face of yours. Yi Qing Luo. Zhou Mo gritted his teeth as his heart was stabbed. Yi Qing Luo couldn't be bothered with him as she turned around and left. Speaking of which, she really did not know where DMO Xian had gone to. Just as he returned to his room, he suddenly heard a slight noise outside the door. Just as Yi Qing Luo was about to lie down on the bed, she raised her brows and looked towards the door. After a while, he heard a light knock on the door. The sound of knocking was very careful. Chapter 3948. Just by listening to the footsteps and the rhythm of the knocking on the door, Yi Qing Luo was able to recognize who was outside the door. When DMO Xian came, he only brought along 2 people from the imperial palace, according to what DMO Xian said. She had specially asked Tang Beiyuan to bring her unromantic fiancé out to relax and cultivate their relationship. Because of this, he knew of their existence. Yi Qing Luo didn't specially look for them. The person at the door was silent for a moment, as if hesitating about something. After a long while, he pushed open the door and walked in. The woman was dressed in a light blue outfit that wrapped around her exquisite body. Just one look, and Yi Qing Luo was able to tell that the lady's exquisite and beautiful face was filled with obvious worry. Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but frowned. Didn't Tang Beiyuan come out with her fiancé? This could also be considered a kind of honeymoon. Why, the worry on Tang Beiyuan's face was even worse than before. She didn't feel like a girl in love at all. Could it be that something had happened between her and her fiancé? Yi Qing Luo thought that Tang Beiyuan had specially come over to look for her, and with such a cautious and bashful look, she thought that she was here to seek advice on how to get along with each other before being lovers. She had not expected that when Tang Beiyuan walked in front of her, she looked at Yi Qing Luo seriously and spoke carefully. Qing Luo, you, don't listen to young Master Mo's rubbish. The Overlord only has you in his heart. The Overlord and Miss June are absolutely not in that kind of relationship which young Master Mo had mentioned. As soon as he said that, Yi Qing Luo was stunned. What was going on? Why did he suddenly say this to her? Yi Qing Luo coughed fiercely. Bei Yuan, do you think that I will take Zhou Mo's words to heart? Tang Beiyuan shook her head, then nodded. I just wanted to explain on behalf of the Overlord. Yi Qing Luo stretched out her hand and grabbed Tang Beiyuan's hand, pulling her to the bedside to sit down. This matter totally doesn't require any explanation. I totally didn't put what Zhou Mo said to heart. Tang Beiyuan pursed her red lips. I know, but it's my duty. I naturally believe in Xian. Yi Qing Luo leaned against the headboard. And I naturally believe in Xiao Qingwu's character. Speaking of which, DMO Xian and Jun Qinggu had met before her. If anything had happened to them, it would not have been her turn to appear. Furthermore, Yi Qing Luo's lips curled upwards as she gave a chilly smile. Even if Xian had 10 guts, he wouldn't dare to mess around behind my back. After a slight pause, she continued, even if he wants to mess around, my little Qinggu, doesn't have any thoughts about him. It was not her blind trust in the friend she thought. It was a feeling. She didn't know how to describe this feeling. "Oh," Tang Beiyuan replied indifferently. Then she lowered her head in silence. There was a dejected look on her face. "Beiyuan, are you and your fiancé?" Yi Qing Luo frowned as she raised her hand and caressed Beiyuan's glabella. To be honest, every time he saw Tang Beiyuan, the worry on her face deepened. The space between his brows was wrinkled. However, before her hand could even touch Tang Beiyuan's eyes widened. Her outstretched palm was covered by a broad and thick palm. Suddenly his body felt light. Her whole body fell into a broad and warm embrace. The elegant sandalwood fragrance filled her inner heart. A man's mellow voice floated down from above her head. "When I wasn't around, Lil Luo, I seemed to be bad-mouthing me.